Good evening, welcome to the special joint meeting of the North Smithfield Town Council and the Smithfield School Committee. We'll call the Town Council meeting to order, and I think that Madam Vice Chair, would you want to call the...
I actually already did.
You already did? Okay. Okay, very good. And we'll begin with a prayer and pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Alves? McGee? Yazbek? Present.
Here. So we have a number of items on the agenda this evening. We have two, or one that pertains to licenses, which I believe is going to be very, very quick. So let's begin with that. In terms of item number 3 of the agenda, North Smithfield Town Council sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. A is one transfer of Class A liquor license from Park Square Wine and Spirits Inc. to Triple O LLC doing business as Park Square Wine and Spirits Inc. Madam Clerk.
Yes, I do have a request for transfer of license. There is a problem with some outstanding claims. I believe Mr. Friedman here is here to represent.
Mr. Freeman, please. Just if you would step to the podium and state your name for the record, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Friedman. I am here in connection with the requested transfer of the liquor license on the property located at 6080 Dowling Highway, known as Park Square Wine and Spirits. If, with your permission, I'd like to give you a little bit of background of what we're doing here and who the parties are. The transferees are Mr. and Mrs. Carmel and Savannah Patel. Mr. and Mrs. Patel are here this evening. They have reached an agreement with Mrs. Thompson to purchase the store at, as I said, at 6080 Dowling Highway. Mr. and Mrs. Patel are experienced owners and operators of retail liquor stores. They, for the last 12 years, have owned a liquor store in Bellingham, and until 2 months ago, also owned and operated a store in Bedford, which they sold for the purpose of acquiring the funds to be able to consummate a cash acquisition of not just the liquor store, but also the real estate in the town. Mrs. Patel is a hands-on operator and will devote her full-time attention to the Smithfield store, and Mr. Patel will also be actively involved. At the time of the advertising, as Ms. Todd said, we got notice from the distributors indicating that there's a current payable in the ordinary course that needed to be satisfied before they would withdraw their objection to the transfer of the license. We understand that the transfer is also subject to the receipt by the town of a clearance from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation showing that all taxes and other obligations are paid in full. My request of the council this evening would be that approval be given on a conditional basis, and obviously nothing can be transferred until you're satisfied that the creditors have withdrawn their objection and the state Division of Taxation has signed off. The best information we have, because it's been a busy time at the Division of Taxation, it's a bad time of year to ask them for much of anything. It's a couple of weeks away from getting that clearance. As soon as we get the clearance, then we will get the exact balance due to the vendors. The parties have an agreement about how they're going to allocate responsibility, but we understand that that payment has to be made, and you guys have to get a letter satisfying yourself, showing satisfaction of withdrawing the objection, and only after you get both of those will you be in a position to approve the transfer. So that's why I'm asking for conditional approval now.
This has been a customary practice. Does anybody in the council have any questions? Would anybody care to make a motion?
Motion to approve condition upon the receipt by the town clerk of the certificate of good standing for the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, State of Rhode Island, and letters from Horizon Beverage, Rhode Island Distributing, and any other vendor that comes forth in the meantime that their debts have been satisfied.
Motion by Mr. Yazbek, is there a second? Second by Councilor Alves. Zelinski. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Alves? Yes. Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazdi? Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very much. Congratulations and welcome to Smithfield.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. The second license on the agenda is an entertainment license for Galvo LLC, doing business as Cucina and Grill. Is there somebody here this evening, sir? Would you please step forward to speak to the record?
Mark Sawicki, one of the owners.
Does anybody in the council have any questions? I should first ask Madam Clerk if the table
Everything is in order.
Thank you so much.
Motion to approve the application as presented.
Motion by Councilor Yazdak, is there a second? Second by Councilor Alves. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Alves? Yes. Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazdi?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
Yes, motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Just to be curious to know if there are folks here this evening who are here for Anchor Subaru, if you could just show of hands, just want to get a sense as to how many, okay, that's about, I'd say roughly half. So we're going to proceed with the next agenda item. I've budgeted approximately between an hour and 90 minutes for each of these two items. They're both substantive. We may not need 90 minutes. That's why we kept the agenda fairly clear for this evening of other business. So with that, I'll move to item number 4, presentation of the school department accounting review. This is listed by the council, on the agenda as discussion by council, vote, or other action. And now we're calling for Stephen Robinson. The TS officer, Mr. Robinson, was hired by the town council to represent it in matters pertaining to the review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, members of the school committee. Just as a little short background, most of this time will be for the experts to give you their opinion, but my first involvement started sometime in January, and on January 27th, just by way of background, Attorney Scungi, on behalf of the school committee, notified all the appropriate parties, including the council and others, that the school department anticipated approximately $450,000 deficit. Among that was a plan to correct that deficit, which among other things, was going to eliminate sports and do certain other things. And obviously that created a lot of anxiety in the town, on all areas. And at that point, the council had concerns about the legality of how it's proceeding and whether in fact there might be more legal issues that would arise from that in the future. And as a result of that, I was brought in. January 30th, I was retained. On February 10th, we had a council meeting in which the council decided to return certain amounts of those funds to the school committee, and an edge were engaged by me to review the budget. Not just that, by way of background, we've worked together in various communities on rural actions, on budget crisis matters, many times, probably going back 20 years. And there's much detailed stuff that's not appropriate for an attorney to get into. The numbers, the programs. So Mr. Sweeney, who brings expertise in education, and Mr. Edge, who brings expertise in accounting, have worked very closely with me in the past, providing support. So it was our firm who retained them to prepare this report, and they will be the ones who present it. So if there are any questions that arise during this period that are of a legal nature, either during or after, I'll be happy to address those at that time. And who's leading off? Mr. Edge, who is prepared to lead off.
Just a quick question to the town administrator before we start. Just wondering, the report, we received it in our packets on Thursday. Is there any chance that this may be available on the town website at this point for people if they're interested?
We'll have it afterwards this meeting is completed.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Edge.
Thank you. Good evening. Usually like to start off with a little bit about myself. I made the best decision in my life in North Smithfield. I asked my wife to marry me to build a cake.
Now for a good start. For a good start.
Thank you. My job will be to give you an overview of the report and areas that I was involved in, and then Mrs. Sweeney will do his 4 sections, and then I'll come up and do the completion. We'll try to do it in 20 minutes. In order to do that, obviously, we'll have to skip a lot of the sections and just kind of give an overview on it. I'd like to start by saying the school department was totally cooperative in this effort. The superintendent and the financial officer met with us on numerous occasions, and we went through all of the items that we found, a lot of items they actually found, and we were very pleased to say that right now we're in agreement that the school department, at this point in time, would have over a $400,000 surplus if the council agrees to waive the $164,000 bond payment, which I believe is appropriate because of the way the transactions happen during this time. I'm going to skip the executive summary, or just on the table of contents. The first 3 sections I wrote, the last 3 sections I wrote, and Tom wrote the 4 in the middle. So I'll pass it off to Tom when we get to his, and then I'll come back up at the end. Tom and I will answer questions from the council and the school committee. We do not take questions from the public. We found that becomes argumentative, and I've done it for years and years, and it's usually not fruitful. I would also like to point out that the budget committee helped us significantly in this process. We met with the budget committee's chair for 2 hours, and he gave us enough information to keep us busy for about another month or 2. But we read it, we think that the budget committee did a lot of great things. They found things that had not been found before. They made a lot of good findings. Unfortunately, I think they did some things that I wouldn't have done, and I pointed that out in the report. So, no further ado, we'll move into the report. If you turn to the section of the report called the introduction, the executive summary is just a summary of each one of the sections. And since we're going to go through the sections, it makes no sense to do the executive summary. As I just pointed out, the school department and B&E have agreed that at this point in time there would be a surplus of $441,936 at the end of the year. However, I have to emphasize that budget line items, and there's hundreds of them, change every day. They go up, they go down, they stay sideways, and that $441,000 may be greater at the end of the year, it may be less, it may not, it may be 0. It may even be a loss. But that's something people that deal with budgets understand. The day after you do it, it's wrong. The next day, you do it again, it's wrong the next day. So it's important. I'm going to go through this table on this when I get back to section 10, because that's where I explain all the adjustments. This is simply introduction to the table, and it shows that the number that I just did. And I do have a paragraph that says that the reader should keep in mind that things change every day, and I don't know if it'll stay this way or not. In addition to that schedule in the introductory section, there's also the 5 questions that I came up with that seem to be obvious from what I was asked to do and how we put together our scope of work. The first question was, did the North Smithfield School Department need the $470,000 when they reported the deficit January 14th? Our conclusion is yes. We believe that they needed it because Mr. Sweeney did a review of their special ed and came up with a $240,000 deficit. And also this issue about the bond payment, I believe had been miscommunicated, and it messed that up, and that $164,000 was also part of this. So if you look at that little table, it shows that the description of the $470,000 was central office overage, $27,000. That would not rise to the level of having to notify the state. The next one is overage in facilities. That's the net between the $164,000 bond payment and the reduction remaining in utilities. The overage of pupil personnel services, that's the outside district placement activity which Mr. Sweeney reviewed. And the last one is the calculation of salaries and benefits savings that were expected when the calculation was done. So basically, in conclusion, we believe the business manager was correct in notifying both the town and the state that her calculation showed there was going to be a deficit at year end. And we believe that the timing of that there is no good time to tell anybody that you're going to have a big deficit. But if you wait too long, you don't do your job. You do it too early, you may be jumping the gun because, as you can see from this report, things change. And the school department was very fortunate in that a lot of the changes were favorable variances. And that's why we're here today, knowing, hoping that it continues and that there is no need for additional funds to be transferred. The next question was the North Smithfield School Department needed the $240,000 when the town transferred it over. I believe that's also true at that point in time because the bond payment was still an issue, $164,000, and there was also the reduced issue on special ed. So I think the town did the right thing by giving the $240,000 and at that time. Next item was, were there any suspicious activities happening in the purchase of fuel, credits per student, or reporting transportation costs? Although this was expected to be a big issue with all kinds of ramifications, it was really very simple. What happens is the school department buys their fuel and has it delivered to first student. First student uses the fuel to put in your buses, and the state's buses that take your students, special ed students, to where they have to go. First student has to pay for the fuel that goes in the state bus. You have to pay for the fuel that goes into your buses. So first student used your fuel and reimbursed you for dollar for dollar what it costs to have the fuel paid. The net is net zero. There's no change. The school department doesn't gain or lose from the transaction. And I would suggest that the way that you are doing it, which is you pay for the fuel, is the less expensive way to do it, because you don't have to pay the taxes. Whereas the way the state does it, it's a more expensive way. And since the state passes on costs to you, especially on transportation, you selling the fuel at a lower cost per student saves first student money, which then saves the state money, which then saves you money. So this really isn't an issue. I've seen it in other communities. And I don't see how this grew up to where it was, but it was a big issue when I walked in the door. And I just want to point out that I don't think it was a big deal. Does the school department currently, the next question was, does the school department currently have a problem with encumbrances? Well, there was a review done by the auditor, actually, the town's auditor, which showed that there were significant problems with encumbrances in 2009 to 2012. But there is nothing current for 13 and 14. This isn't part of the 2014 review that you hired me to do, but it made sense to try to answer this question. So I met with the school department and we went over the 2013 encumbrances, which would have been the most current encumbrances that would have gone through the activity and been deleted or rolled back into fund balance. And what I found was out of $400 and something thousand, there was only $7,000 that went back into fund balance. That's a reasonably small amount given the total encumbrances that were encumbered at the end of the year was over 400,000. 400,000 sounds like a big number until you realize that they have to encumber out of this replacements, they encumber salaries and wages for some payroll. So their encumbrances are much bigger than a town now. But the financial officer is doing an excellent job on encumbrances. And I believe that this was an issue more of the past financial officer than the current financial officer. I think Lisa is really very good at reviewing her encumbrances and making sure that they get canceled if they're not going to be implemented. Number 5 was there a problem with over budgeting of utilities resulting from a transfer of funds to the town for the inefficiency thing? This was, in my opinion, this was messed up from day one. I don't think anybody should have recommended. I understand why it was done, but we would never agree to this, or we were asked, never would approve. What you did was, or what the school did was, they made a calculation of the utilities as if it was still 2009, not taking into consideration the savings from the energy work that's done, and they budgeted that, and then that extra budgeted money then transferred to the town. So basically, the town was giving them too much money in utilities, only to have it turn around and be paid back to the town. Seems like a total waste of time to me. The reason it happened was because The contract that the town signed with the people who did the work said, this is what we're going to agree to. If you don't save enough to make bond payments, we'll contribute. Now, that should be calculated on a subsidiary ledger, not in your budget or in your financial. You would keep a separate record. You would do that calculation as if it was 2009, compare it to what you actually spent in 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And if you didn't save enough to pay the bond payment, give them a call and say, send the money over because you owe us money. Running it through your budget only made it more confusing than it had to be. The budget committee pointed this out and said, and I totally concurred in the report and now again tonight, that they said budget as if whatever you're going to need for 2014. And they cut the money, basically recommended they cut the money out of the school department did, cut the money out of the utilities. The problem with that was, when you cut the money out of the utilities, yes, you pay less to the school department, but then the school department added a line item to pay you bond payment. Well, that, if they pay you the bond payment and you get the benefit of the reduction in the utilities, you get the money twice. So that was wrong. So that's still a problem. And I had mentioned that in this report. I explained that if you want to do this right, you really can't have them pay it twice. Now, on the other hand, and this isn't part of it because I was only supposed to do 2014, but I noticed in 2015, the school department kept the $240,000 and did not pay the bond payment, so they're taking it.
164, I think.
164. Well, I'm getting confused. You're right. It's 164. Make all those changes in the minds like this. Get it right. But $164,000. The bottom line is the school department, not trying to do anything wrong, used both the reduction of the 164 and the 240. That's what I was talking about, which is the appropriated money that you did in the middle of the year, and that would be taking the 164 price. So the 15 budget would be fixed if you do what I'm recommending in this report. Fixed working and and the last question was, did the school department correctly account for the funds refunded from the collaborative? They did it exactly the way everybody in the collaborative does. If you get a dividend, that dividend goes to reduce the fee you got to pay for each person, and the way they did it is fine, and they didn't write up on it. The only reason I even mentioned it was because the budget committee's report thought it was going to result in a structural deficit, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with their definition of structural deficit. And that's, the bottom line is, they're entitled to their opinion, I'm entitled to my opinion. And if they get up here, they might explain to you why I'm wrong. But I'm just telling you what I think is correct. Budget committee, as I said, did a lot of good things. I believe they did a much thorougher job on reviewing the school department than predecessor budget committees have done. I think they've done a good job identifying areas like the utilities, like the miscellaneous revenues. And all those items were very, very important to getting the budget in a better position by the time I got it. In other words, they have fixed a lot of problems that I didn't have to deal with. They did do some things, though, that were, in my opinion, not appropriate. They gave their recommendation to level fund without a schedule or documentation to show you how they got to the $240,000. I know they had a schedule, because I was shown the schedule, and the schedule justified the $240,000. But they were pointing out, and I agree with this too, because of the timing of this entire budget, how it spread out over so much time, that then crunched at the end, the budget committee had to do their work so quickly, they didn't get time to finish the job, and they still had concerns. So to cushion their concerns, they suggested level funding and a $240 would be given to the school department if they needed it. And I think it was related to sports, which was also confusing. By the way, I'm not even sure I'm not aware, but that sounds illegal to me that you can appropriate and then retain. But I've seen it lately, and I'm surprised about it. The other thing too is I think the budget committee went a little beyond its scope when it started looking at encumbrances, when it looked at fixed asset purchases in prior year. Neither of those, and the fund balances, none of that has to do with 2014. The encumbrances of 2014 are very important. They should have been reviewed. But the previous year encumbrances, once again, are not this financial office's encumbrances. And the budgets, they did exactly what I would have done. They did all the actual, gathered all the actual information, prepared that in the current budget, would have done the exact same thing. But you have to keep in mind, the person doing the budget this year is not the one that did those other budgets. And they might have a different style, they might do their budget different. You have to keep that in mind. But in general, I would say the budget committee deserves a lot of credit for what they did do. I wrote a section in here about the communication between the two parties. I think it got down in the mud. I really did. I think both parties went too far, and I'm not going to bore people with what I said about each of them. But I do think that there's a lot of distrust in this town, and I don't understand why. I think the school committee are nice people. I only met with the chair of this budget committee, and he's a nice guy. I spoke to the council members of the township administration, and everybody in this town is nice, so I don't know what the mistrust is. I'll let Tom do his and I'll come back to you later.
And while Tom is coming up, I just wanted to suggest an approach of how we can have questions later, but maybe after you come back at the end, Walter, and finish your section, we could have an opportunity for clarifying questions. If there's something you wanted to ask about the report, and then if you want to share their own observations, we can do that at the end. Welcome. Thank you.
I started with special education review. I'm usually the bad guy. This is probably the worst special education budget I've ever seen in its formation. It was horrendous. I think I say that in the report. I think the report speaks for itself. A lot of it was based upon pure wishful thinking by the former special ed director who thought he would cut $187,000 with no basis for those cuts whatsoever. No follow-through. Not even putting in some cases, ESY course, extended school year course, put in budget in many of the cases, but regular tuition budget, but not the extended year piece. There were students who, well, maybe they might come back into the school system. Maybes don't work it. You've got to confirm that those students aren't coming back in. If they're coming, if you don't have a confirmation, you have to budget, or you have deficits. They have a line item in the budget which talks about unanticipated district placements. In my estimation, that should be funded. And I say in the report, funded on the basis of the average for the last 3 years of students that come into the school system who need special ed out-of-district placements, often come with government permit, and you have a group home. If you have a group home, it's going to be all over the place. They move in and out of group homes, and when they move in and out, most of those kids are in special ed out-of-district placements, a lot of them are, and you have to fund them. You have no choice, and some are extremely expensive. And it varies from year to year. You might have a year where 2 or 3 leave, and then you budgeted for them, and then that becomes a surplus. Or you could have 5, in this year especially, you had 5 that came in at all, after the budget was put together. They were very expensive. So if you had that line item, unanticipated out-of-district placements, funded at a 3-year average, and restricted by the school department, you can't restrict it, the school department, school committee can restrict it just to be spent to take care of those scenarios. And that amount will change as a 3-year average change. It's a reasonable approach. It avoids deficits. Because this is an area where you can get the deficit very, very quick. If you look at the report, I might just mention, of the 17 of the 28 students weren't funded. 10 did not become eligible for an OLD placement until after the revised budget. 2 of the students were supposed to complete their requirements, had not completed their requirements for their placement. Because they had not completed it, they didn't budget. Even though they knew they were in the queue, ready to go, they weren't budgeted. Of the 10, at least these 10 students, 4 left the system after the beginning of the school year with a total expense of only $11,176. The remaining 6 represented an unbudgeted expense of $345,421. I made a number of recommendations based on the information that you need in the findings. The recommendations, again, the first one being the unanticipated tuitions, that should be funded at an average 3-year average. There should be establish a continuing communication with the service providers with regard to tuition increases. Part of the problem when you budget as early as you do is those tuition increases don't come through until the summer or beginning of the school year, and you don't know what they're going to be. And if you maintain a good communication, you can put a lot of pressure on the service providers to give you that information or give you at least some sort of an estimate, a good estimate as to what they're going to be for the budget year. Fully budget all OLD placements, out-of-district placements, unless there is a firm evidence on the ending date of the placement. We've got to do that in any special education funding process. The other thing that they hadn't done for a number of years, and was confirmed by the superintendent, that those questionable and dubious placements should be vigorously litigated if there is a reasonable expectation that the placement litigation will result in an appropriate, educationally sound placement at a decreased cost. You are only required to find appropriate replacements for out-of-district students. Appropriate. Doesn't have to be the best with all the frills. It has to be appropriate. And there are a lot of them. There are good placements that we have. But there's a process you go through. It starts with the department, it starts in-house. It then goes to the Department of Education, where there's mediation. And after mediation, if that's not satisfactory, either party, either parent or the school department, can go to the next level and litigate. My suggestion is that they begin that process. And from reading the superintendent's responses, they agree and they're going to start doing that type of thing, where they had not done it before. Compliance with the basic education plan. And you've read a lot, and the Valley agrees and other districts that are running into the same problem. The basic education plan requires a lot of things. It's result-oriented. It requires additions to what you are presently doing, above and beyond. Some of it in staffing, some of it in service, etc. Some in text and programs. Every district is bound by state law and by regulations of the Department of Education to follow the basic education plan and implement it 100%. I would say there isn't a district in the state of Rhode Island that has it 100%. Not a district. But the object is to continue working it. If you take it, I don't know if you saw the document, there is a document that was developed by the superintendent, a 36-page document over 14 to 16 months with himself and his staff. It's one of the finest documents I've seen. I don't think there's another document like it anywhere. In fact, I know the Department of Education is looking at it as a model. So it's a great document. The problem with it is that you can't take the $1.2 million that he says he needs to fill the implement and throw it in one budget. Can't do that. One, it'll put you way over the 4%. Two, you don't have enough staff time to do the in-service and preparation of 1 year to implement it. So you've got to look at it from a 3 to 5 year period to implement it to the full extent. My suggestion is you sit down with the superintendent, he comes to the council with the budget commission, says, this is what I'm looking at, here's my plan. Over the next 4 years, I'm going to increase this in the first year, this in the second year, this in the third year, and by the time I get to the 4th or 5th year, I'll have 100% program and the BDP, and it can be done, and it can be done reasonably. But the document they put together, the responsibilities that they say they have, and it should be funded, and it will be more, it will be in addition to what you are now giving them, because it's above and beyond what they're doing now. I think that has to be documented, and I'm sure the superintendent can do that too. I also looked at the policy handbook. I only looked at one section of the policy handbook, and that was the financial section. This is a budget review, it's not the whole thing. Through the program review, we look at the entire document. The policy handbook, as I start in the middle, is a requirement. It's 16232 of the state of Rhode Island. All school committees in the state will have a policy manual. The policy manual will have all school committee policies in writing, properly indexed, and kept up to date. Policy manuals will be a source to govern each school system. The policy manual will be available to the faculty and staff of each school library. At least one policy manual will be available for public reference at each administrative building and public library. This specific review is only on the financial section. This is a document not just for the school committee, not just for the administrators and the teachers, it's for the general public. That's why they put it in libraries. It gives the community an idea of what the school committee is doing and what other policies that guide their decision making. They're not, true. Yes, all of their decisions should result from their policy handbook, because it should be spelled out in policy the direction they want to go. I found that the finance section, the school committee has no responsibility. Their particular policy book just says, superintendent's in charge, follow all the laws. That's basically what their 5 sections, they have a financial management overview, budget, accounting system, audit, and spending and minimum fund balances. Give you an example, under audits, it says there has to be an audit in concert with the town, a single audit principle. That's what it says. By the way, it doesn't say that once the audit is completed, the school committee wants to have the audit, the company come back and report to the school committee with their recommendations, their management level. It doesn't say anything. That's part of the policy here. You also know in special ed, I said they made something like 35 line item changes in order to save money and to transfer money into district placements. There's nothing in there about what's the school committee policy on changing line items. The only one that has authority, once the school committee has a budget approved, to change line items, is the school committee itself. It can give that responsibility to the superintendent, to the finance director. That's possible. But you start off, they have the responsibility. Most policy manuals say 3 to 4 to 5 or a quarterly basis, the financial manager will come back and show the line item changes how to be made. And then they approve them. Nowhere in the financial policy handbook does it say the school committee pays the bills. I don't know any school committee in the state that doesn't have a little section on their school committee agenda each month that says payment of bills. And they approve the bills. They may say some bills, those that come every month, utility bills, etc., may be paid, but they still have to be approved by the school committee. There's nothing in their policy handbook with respect to that. It should be. It has all the laws and all the regulations, but it doesn't have the direct involvement of the school committee that it should have. So that's my observations and my recommendations. Indicate that they're willing to take that, get involved in the financial piece. Let me give you another one I really love. When you put a budget together, they talk about budget as 5-month budget. Now, that's maybe true to a certain extent, but you don't take your department chairman and not give him some goals, some directions in order to create his budget. He just doesn't create a budget on his own. Many school districts, what they'll do is the superintendent will come in front of the school committee, apply the budget in the policy handbook, provide the school committee with a list of what his priorities are, give the school committee a chance to add the priorities they have, and then take those back. The the superintendent puts together administrative procedure all the way down the line for the people who work on the budget, and then the budget is constructed. But it's budgeted with the direction coming from the school committee, who, by the way, on the state level, have that responsibility. They give it to the superintendent, but they give it with direction. This is financial, the policy handbook does not have. And it can be easily corrected. And I know that a lot of the things I'm saying, the superintendent is doing, but nowhere does it say that in the policy handbook.
Mrs. Sweeney, I just wanted to give you a quick time check, because we're about almost 40 minutes into a 20-minute presentation. I just wanted you to realize that there's sufficient time for questions.
I only have one other section that I'll cover. I reviewed all the legal contracts. I made just a couple of comments on them. I found that the wages were very reasonable in this climate, financial climate. The fact that the cost of healthcare, the copay has gone up from 15 to 18 over the course of time. Those are very positive things. One other thing I didn't even put in the report because it was so little, is I did get a chance to take a look at the master schedules of the high school and the middle school. I looked at it, I found nothing in them. In February, there was having an effect on the budget. When you want to take a look at that, you have to do it well before the school year begins, if you're going to have any effect on the schedules.
Make this quick. The section 8 is the health insurance refunds from the collaborative. I've already touched upon that, and I'm not going to go into it anymore. It simply was done right, and nothing else needs to be said. The budgeting process, if you take nothing else out of this entire presentation, is the school department's requirements under the budget committee's requirements under the budget term of the time they start in September and October. Imagine opening up the school and saying, let's work on next year's budget. I mean, that's pretty much what's happening here. I don't think a budget should come into the to the town until March or April, and they need the time to put it all together to get good numbers by then. And even then, I think you should be prepared for changes that happen as in May and June. In other words, it's not stagnant. So they give you a budget in April, or even March, and then they're going to come back to you and give you changes.
This is actually one of the areas that is a shared agreement, and as a matter of fact, we're proposing to address that with charter amendments that are going to be put before voters in November.
Excellent. And hopefully it may be really shortens up a lot. Because moving in a couple of months is going to do a good job. It's got to be substantial. The only other thing that's very, very important in this section is the executive summary. I was fortunate enough to work a couple of months ago with Lisa in Smithfield, and then come and work with Lisa in North Smithfield. And both of them, in my opinion, didn't understand that the executive summary in the budget sells the budget. It's the verbiage that you give the reader up front in English that sells the budget. And in that executive summary, there has to be a schedule that says, this line item is changed for this reason, materiality line, not $200 or $300 items. But if you take the large material items and you say this one changed for this reason, this one changed for this reason, you get all the pluses and all the minuses, and the budget becomes totally transparent. There's not a whole lot. It helps the budget committee because it actually gives them an opportunity to read what items have changed. Then they can do more work on the ones that changed and less necessarily on the others. But it helps everybody. It helps the readers, the public, the budget committee, everybody. So the executive summary has to be improved. I will tell you this, that Smithfield sent me theirs for this year, and it's excellent. So if you get a chance to get their executive summary, the school department's already done this because they're trying to make the changes that we're recommending. And they're going to try to do this. They're going to try and make the executive summary do its job. The last section I have is the adjustments. I'm going to do this real quickly because what happened here was I was hired and I was told it was a $400,000 deficit, and I went over to the school department, and actually, I think the town administrator gave me this first document that showed that the school department in February had already brought the deficit down to $100,000. And they did that by using the $240 that they were given as an appropriation. And the other big item is they found out that the turnover allowance went from $60,000 up to $204,000. Turnover allowance will grow during the year. So it's still in this analysis, though. In February, they still have the special education problem and the bond payment problem. So then what happens is I go in and meet Lisa for the first time, and I sit down at her desk, and she says, "Walter, here's adjustments that I found since I did my February report, and 99% of the time I look up there and there's more money than me." It wasn't that way this time. They actually came up with $136,000 worth of adjustments that I had nothing to do with, that brought them to a surplus of $35,000 before I started. So we were kidding around, and Lisa said, "Well, you don't have to work now, Walter, because we already got the call." But I still did what I usually do, and I went through every single line item of this project, line by line, compared budget to actual, did the same thing the budget committee was trying to do. I was given 5 years of actual, so it's a lot easier. And I found out that the health insurance there was $100,000 worth of savings for two reasons. One, there was turnover allowance, and you get savings in health insurance out of the turnover allowance. And two was, they were lucky because some people took the buyback and went out of insurance. Either a new person came in, said, "I'll take the buyback," or the old person was taking insurance. You save $10,000 every time that happens. So they got 2 breaks in a row. And I think everybody should be happy that these are favorable, because I'm in communities where the exact house. Somebody comes in and they say, "I need insurance." The person they replace it to have the buyback, we lose $10,000 a shot. The next one is Mr. Sweeney's. He found in the special ed grant money, $48,000 for district placements. The transportation credit is credit that came in while I was there, and Lisa told me about it, and we added it as a deduction. The Woonsocket vocational was $40,000. That was a special ed reduction that was identified while we were working on this. Unemployment insurance, it was overstated, and I sat down with Lisa and we worked out, we cut it in half, it was $40 grand, cut it down to $20. The transportation credit was from the state gave a transportation credit, we identified it. It happened while I was there, so I mean, all these things happened well after February. The next two I wouldn't even have made, except I wanted the school department to do a calculation of the fuel and the electricity to see whether or not I cut it too much or too little, and whether that there was still savings, or whether or not we need to put some money back in. And ironically, they offset each other, so it's a non-issue. And the last one is the bond payment. And the bond payment is an issue I should have touched upon, and I think it's important that it be addressed. And I have a way of addressing it. I don't even remember where it is in the report, so I'll just give it to you. I'm making a recommendation which I don't believe is necessarily legal, and I know it can't be done without cooperation from both sides. So if you really want to start cooperating, this is the one to do it on. The school department would have to give up some of the $240,000 that you gave them away. They give up $164,000. It would be re-identified as a waiver of the bond payment. The town would have to give up ever collecting the bond payment again. So what would happen is, instead of having a $400,000 surplus, the school, almost 100% supplied by the town, by the way. If you have a surplus, you pay it. Okay, that's what happens when all this shakes up. Your requirement will drop down to $240,000, and their profit will drop down by $164,000 to a much more reasonable $270,000 profit. I can't guarantee these profits are going to be there at the end of the year. The good news is we've got less months ahead of us than we had behind us. And we've had very favorable variances so far, and I'm hopeful that they allow us to continue that way. And we're available for any questions.
Thank you very much. So at this time, it's 10 minutes to 8, and I'd like to suggest that we spend the next short time we've had the benefit on the council and school committee of being able to review this document in great detail. I realize for most of you sitting here this evening, you're hearing some of it for a time. So I know I have some questions, and I'm sure that my colleagues have some questions, and perhaps the school committee has clarifying questions. What did you mean by this? Was this the right, was it from this point to this point, that kind of thing? So I'd like to try to do that, and then reserve some time at the end where we can, people want to share their opinions on where we go from here, how do we use the document and recommendations to be presented to us, and we can have that time. So does that sound like an appropriate way to proceed? Everybody in agreement? So this time, are there any?
It's just the council.
No, it's all.
Just the town council.
Correct.
Also say our lesson.
Correct. Correct. So it's clarifying questions. On the report. Any clarifying questions?
Yeah, one. I have a couple of questions actually, but on the clarification point. The purpose of taking the bond payment out of the school department budget is so, in this manner, is so that it won't affect your MOE going forward?
The impact would be, if you do what I'm recommending, taking it out of the 240,000 and restating it as being a waiver of the bond payment rather than appropriating new money and maintenance of that. The school department would have to agree to that, because once it's given to them, they really are in a position where they can keep it. So if they say, we'll go along with this, it'll give you back 160,000 of the 240, and it will reduce their maintenance of that, 15, I'm sorry.
Well, I'd just like to know who came up with the question.
I did.
Okay. So,
The questions came, that's a good question, actually. What happens is when I meet with the clients, and I met with the budget committee, there was a lot of things that seemed to be not answered fully the way I thought they should be answered. So I wrote questions and I write the answers. It makes it a lot easier.
okay, so it was an agreed upon procedures project, and you were the one that identified what things you wanted to look at. Because Councilor Zelinski and I were talking on the sidebar, and we apologize for being rude. But the first thing we heard about this fuel issue, number 3, was tonight. So I don't know how that doesn't get to the town council, but it got to you. So I'm a little confused, only because I would have thought as a town council, we would have heard about a potential problem with fuel credit.
I think we heard that from the budget committee, and that was one of the concerns that they raised to the council.
And I came up with questions after dealing with the budget.
Yeah, I mean, all right, council says he doesn't recall. I don't recall it. I mean, it may have been mentioned, but whether or not it should have made the 5 big or the 6 big items, I'm a little lost how it made the 5 or 6 in the final cut. That's all I'm saying. I think I would have wanted to have, if it was that big of an issue, and it was something that was just said in passing, or we don't recall it, then it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't brought to our attention. It should have been emphasized.
So for my clarifying questions, I wanted to just sort of write them down. So the January 22nd declaration of the projected deficit of $477,000 was based on the school department's quarterly report to RIDE ending, I believe it was December 31st, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which is 6 months into the fiscal year. The B&E review was a snapshot review through what I don't believe it was stated, I believe it was through March 31st, or was it February 27th?
No, we were working on it through part of March, yes.
Okay, so through March 31st, which would have been 9 months into the fiscal year. Your conclusion at that 9-month period is that instead of there being a $477,000 deficit, there's in fact a projected surplus of $441,936. So that's a swing of nearly $1 million in accounting at least in 3 months' time, from December 31st to March 31st. Okay?
That sounds about right.
Okay. And we know that there was the concern about there being a possible deficit was first raised in October of 2013. So on page 5 of the report, one question I had was, in section 4, special education review. You pointed some serious accounting errors in the special education portion of the school department budget. And since this represented such a significant portion of the projected deficit, why do you believe that it wasn't more fully investigated and corrected between October and December? There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of comment. I don't know. And then you said that, you said, for example, in the first two questions, did the school department need the $470,000 reported in January and the $240 that we appropriated held in escrow? The answer was yes, based on the information that was available at the time. And in hindsight, it sounds like you're saying that neither was needed as of your report.
Well,
On March 31st.
first of all, I believe there's only two issues really that we're talking about at both times, the 400 and the 240. And both of them were special ed, and the other one was the bond. Because of what happened with the elimination of the utility expense and the putting in of the bond. That one hasn't changed. Unless you read what I'm recommending, that one still exists. $764,000 is not going to be a problem there, so it's not waiting on. So the real question, I think, is what happened in special ed and why wasn't it taught earlier before I even got involved? Probably because of that. And I can't speak to why it wasn't. I can only speak to the fact that the director of special ed did the budget. It was relied upon by the superintendent, one of his directors. And when he had to cut his budget, he actually went back to the gentleman and asked if he had any cuts that he could use. And he came up with a cut and he basically said he was good. Why at that time nobody challenged his budget or nobody challenged his cut? I can't tell you. I don't know.
So if the town had transferred the projected deficit amount of 470, and it was reported to us and requested a full 470 in January, that would have proven to have been unnecessary based on what we know today. Is that correct?
Yes, and as the 240 is not necessary. And it would have been easy for you to answer these questions. No, it wasn't needed. No, it wasn't needed. But that's really not what I thought happened when I look back at what was available.
Right.
The information that was available was available. I'm also not disagreeing with the information that was available in special ed. It was wrong. But it wasn't totally wrong because Mr. Sweeney came up with an adjustment that was overstated by an amount. And I think the budget committee hit it right on the head when they said, why did they cut $185,000 out of something that now has a $300,000 deficit? I mean, I agree with that question. I would ask the same question. But the point is whether or not you believe that the school department felt, based on the information provided, in other words, the superintendent, the financial officer, whoever, that there was a deficit in special ed. There was, and there is a deficit in special ed.
My next question is actually for Attorney Robinson. It's much more of a legal question. And it has to do with the time limits of transfer. If the council is faced with this type of question. So, for example, would it have been legal and appropriate, instead of having made a transfer of funds in January 22nd, when it was requested, if instead we made a pledge at that time to transfer funds that were demonstrated to be needed on the last day of the fiscal year, should the deficit materialize?
Well, obviously, the first thing you have to do is verify your own whether the funds needed, in fact, are needed, which is the process you engage in here.
But we shouldn't have to, with all due respect, we shouldn't have to spend $25,000 to verify that. Is my point. That's my concern, because my larger concern isn't necessarily what's happening today. My concern is looking forward to make sure that we don't necessarily have to repeat the same agony that the community went through over uncertainties and so forth. So my legal question is, if the council were to decide it wanted to transfer money to close a projected deficit, could we legally pledge to do that, allowing the school department functions to continue without risk of cancellations and so forth, and actually make the appropriation on the last day of the fiscal year?
Well, the answer is yes, you can do that, but the question becomes, do vendors continue to provide services? You know, I mean, if they're almost $500,000 short, and they say, well, we're going to get it the last day of the year, and you're going to get your check on that day. If they'll continue to provide services, sure.
Well, and there's also a provision for the council to meet an emergency meeting at any point to make an appropriation. I presume it's a question about whether the department can meet its obligations in payroll or so forth. If that's on the horizon, then we have the ability to mobilize and do that. The other legal question I had for you, Steve, can you speak to any provisions of state law that govern the return of supplemental appropriations that are made based on either incorrect or information? So, for example, if money a supplemental appropriation is made and it's later determined that it's not needed, that's a concern legally.
Once you've appropriated it for the school department, it's theirs, you've lost control. If you've over-appropriated, they have surplus, which is also in their control. I would take a little issue with Walter. They amended the maintenance of effort statute, and I agree with him, the best thing would be if the parties agreed that 160 could be characterized as bond payment of the 240. That's essentially what we can go with that, Walter, right? But I believe in the way they have amended the law, it's a non-reoccurring payment of sums that the legislature does not contemplate to be a maintenance of effort issue. So you don't get it as, in my opinion, you don't get it as maintenance of effort. But once it has been appropriated to the school department, the city or town has lost control of those funds, and even though it is a surplus, maybe a surplus, it is under their control.
Okay. The final two questions, I think, go back to Walter. Actually, I think we've already actually covered that. Are there any other clarifying questions from either the town council?
I just wanted to clarify with Mr. Sweeney on you saw the 36-page document that the superintendent created regarding the BEP and our compliance, non-compliance with it. As you know, right now, it would be about $1.3 million to cover or to get us within compliance with all of the parts of the BEP. Right now, we are struggling to maintain our current programs within the appropriate amount that we get every year.
As I indicated, that $1.2 million, that probably will change a little bit too as you go on 2 to 3 years. It's not going to stay just at 1.2. That is new money. But it can't be funded in 1 year.
No.
You have a responsibility under the law to completely fund, to implement 100% of the BDP. You have your $1.2 million short of doing that at this point. You take that $1.2 million, you stretch it over, put a plan together of how you're going to implement that, and then its budget impact on those 3 to 5 years. So the Budget Commission, as well as the Town Council, is aware of that plan and the need to add to it. You can't avoid that. You have to implement the BDP.
My question is, we're getting, if we can have a max of 4% cap, like, state law, where does that extra, over even 3 to 5 years, $1.2 million come from? We're at the 4% cap, we're just barely maintaining our current program, so how can we go get extra money?
Personally, I think you have to look at priorities throughout the school system, and that's the budget process. You don't have anything right now that puts you in a position where you're looking at priorities and doing planning as a committee. At least not in your policy, you may be doing it, but not according to policy. You've got to look at that and say, okay, $1.2 million, here are the things I'm doing now. Where can I move things? What can I use that I have to implement this piece? And what do I have to add? So you're not trying to, as I said in the report, taught, you have to do that as economically as possible, because you can't get more than 4%. And every district in the state of Rhode Island is in the same position.
Yeah.
One of the things, just to clarify on special ed, one of the big problems in special ed is that you had a special ed director who put together a budget, who said, I can make these cuts. He went into the school year itself, and he left. You have a new person there who I met with, who's very competent, and he recognized these problems. The superintendent recognized that there were errors made, and therefore will correct them. So I don't expect that will happen again. And if you go back to my former thing, you have a responsibility to run on changes. If you had started to see, you had a policy that every quarter, line item changes coming from the board, and the school committee votes to approve them, you would have begun to see these line item changes in this area, and started to ask questions. So that's why it's so important to have a policy handbook that reflects the responsibility of the school.
And going forward, we are going, honor those recommendations.
So at this point, observations, yes.
I guess I have a question on health insurance, because back in October, they were saying 176,000 was contributing to the deficit, but then in February, we ended up having $100,000 in health insurance savings. How does that happen? When's the enrollment, and when would we know about this?
The question, you said there was originally reported that there was a 167,000.
176 in October, they were saying it's going to be part of the deficit because of health insurance. But then we had a savings of 100,000 in February, so I just don't understand how we can have that much of a sway. And when is open enrollment that we would know that people can change their plans?
Well, let me start by saying anything that is in October was almost back. I've said that before. You can't make good estimates in October on health insurance, on turnover allowance, or on the fees from out of district. It's simply not good. So if you keep going back to October and saying, why are these numbers in October so much different than the numbers now, is because the numbers in October are useless. They are everywhere I live. It's just not the way to do it. The 100,000 you're talking about now has nothing to do with enrollment. It has to do with how you do budgeting of your health insurance. You have two options. One is buyback, and the other one is full health insurance. If somebody is on buyback, you're saving $10,000 plus. If somebody goes off buyback on health insurance, you're losing $10,000.
How many times throughout the year can somebody do that? That's one time, correct?
What I'm talking about is a person changing.
You can change midstream throughout the year.
No, people change. One person leaves, the other one comes in, and that person has a different need. I didn't look into whether or not they can make any changes as an individual. I didn't know they could. So if I could finish the answer. So basically, my $100,000 represents savings in the budget line items that are a result of changes of individual who had need for different types of health insurance. People came in who wanted buyback, and some of them left who had health insurance. The opposite can happen too. I said at least 2 or 3 times. The school department is lucky that their variances were there. I've seen where this variance could have been twice as much going in the other direction. The other part of the 100,000 is when somebody leaves, like we raced through my schedule because we were in bad time. And that schedule answers your question. How do you go from 400,000 loss to $400,000 gain? It's all the time. So I wish I hadn't gone through it as quickly as I did. But the turnover allowance is something that what the school department does is they budget all their salaries and wages. And then if somebody leaves and is replaced by somebody else who will pay less, the end result in there on that line item will start to show savings. And those savings will increase as time passes. So the turnover allowance went from $60,000 in December, or with December numbers, to $204,000 by February. That's not out of the question because it's not only growth, but it grows exponentially because new people are coming into the town. So I can't answer anything about October, but I I can tell you that $100,000 is the two budgeting items that I identified on the individual line item.
Any other questions or observations at this point from members of the council or? Yes. Jack.
No, I just wanted to, referencing the bond payment again, Mr. Reddick. If the town does not receive the bond payment this year, will be headed for a deficit. And in good faith, we gave you $240,000, right? And now we're headed for a significantly higher surplus on the school side. And we're all together in this, I understand, it all comes from the same pot. So in good faith, what I'd like to do is work with the school committee and the school department to try to effect some kind of resolution for this question. The bond payment, according to the school department's audit, and it's a committed fund balance of $160,000. And according, then I'm just going to read this verbatim from the audit. The favorable difference between the budget and the actual expenditures is committed by the school committee specifically to reimburse the town for the bond payments. And the school committee does not consider the funds available for general operation. So, I guess my question here is whether we utilize your suggestion and the legalities thereof, or we talk to Mr. Scunzio and find out, and also with our solicitor, and find out how we can do it, so that neither side at this stage of the game, when we're so close and we're working towards compromises and working better together and trying to see things through, I would respectfully request that, the council, prove that we work collectively together on the very important budget item for this council.
I think when we're done this evening, it's my hope that the council will accept this report as it's submitted and take all the recommendations of those that are going forward. That would be what I would recommend. So that speaks to the
And what you just said, and I didn't know if it was a question or not, but on page 29, I have a paragraph that says, it doesn't make any sense for the town to have a $441,000 deficit and the school department to have a $400,000 surplus when the information is changed. People who are reasonable should be able to sit down and say, okay, I give you an option. There's maybe 7 other options. But somebody should be able to come up with an option that says the school department should not get the benefit of $160,000, whatever it is, and get the benefit of the $240,000. It just doesn't seem fair from my point of view. And if you do what I recommend, the school surplus will still be $277,000, and the impact on the town will be $240 instead of almost $404,000.
I think what the town administrator is referencing, if I understand it correctly, is that the existing fund balance of the school, which is in excess of about $300,000, includes $164,000 that can't be used for anything other than the bond. So the point is, why not have that be appropriated to cover the bond? But I think that
that may be the second way to do it. The second way.
Yeah.
But I think that way it still puts the maintenance of that at 240, which I think isn't fair either.
Well, and that could be part of the negotiating. Is there any
It's allocated for bond, it's not used for bond, even though it's restricted. For it's a bond. School committee for the side.
Question. Can school departments have a fund balance, and what would you recommend for fund balance?
I actually recommend in the report that it be no more than $500,000, because this is school department. 2% of gross revenues is reasonable, and I would say the same thing for the town. And yes, both sides should have a fund balance. And people don't realize that it's one of the 5 or 6 key questions by rating agencies. Does the school department have a surplus, and does the town have a surplus? If you don't say yes on both, your rating goes down. And it happened in North Providence, it happened all over the state of Rhode Island.
That's a
North
great
Providence
question.
had millions of dollars worth
That's a
of.
great question, because I actually, I meant to ask it, and I didn't, and I think that it's very good sound practice to have that in the event of either things that are unforeseen, or if we're talking about things like, if you find that the surplus grows over a certain point, maybe a decision is made about how to use that for something that might not be a one-time expense that you would bond for, say, textbooks, technology, that type of thing.
I appreciate you saying that, because that's always been a source of, I guess, whatever in this community, when the school department has fund balances, and the town one, and you know us,
Yeah, no, I
we've always dealt with it differently, and we would welcome a healthy discussion about that, so we know how to work together.
I think we should have a healthy fund balance on both sides. Other observations? I have a few, but I don't know.
And the only other one I noticed is I was confused about the medical insurance shortfall, because on our page 7, it's $25,000, so I wasn't sure where that previous figure came from, but that was all.
And what I did is I eliminated that $25,000, and I had $80,000 plus. They had $20,000 minus, I gave them a $20,000 adjustment for that.
Only other one I had, is there a difference between this and educational performance side?
Oh, yeah. If we do it, question 3 times that.
What would an educational performance audit show?
Actually, I think it shows a lot. In one area, it would have really shown a significant improvements that can be made in special ed. Now, you're already addressing that, so that's good, but we don't know whether you're addressing it exactly right or not. And Tom goes in and will go through the special ed and go through the entire IEP work and everything else. I think that a budget review from the stuff I do, at the price you pay for this, you get almost the exact same with that and a performance review. The thing we do more though is we actually look at staffing, we determine whether or not they're overstaffed or understaffed. We look at salaries and wages to see if they're comparable or not, or lower to high. We look at the contracts, contracts for anything $5,000 or more, photocopy machines and stuff like that. We even found where a telephone line went from high school to the middle school and had not been used for 7 years, never paying $35 a month. So, I mean, we go into a lot more detail when we're doing a performance review. Tom's sections, the way I explain it is, we're doing a budget review, about 60 to 70% of the budget review is done by me, so 30% by Tom. We're doing it the other performance review, it's 70% Tom and 30% me.
Just to give it a little bit more information, we look at all the schedule, K-12 enrollments, plan enrollments, come any enrollment data that you have from past and years to come. We look at that. We look at your number of teachers, your class size every year. We look at every program you're running, not only out of district placements, but we also look at every in-house program that you have. We look at the entire policy handbook.
We have determined funding adequacy as a result of that?
To a certain degree, we do, yes.
So from my reading of the report, and based on what I already knew, we have a lot of reasons to be very proud of our school department in this community.
Thank you. I appreciate that because that's the conclusion I reached as well. And I
let me, this is my time to honor that. What I was going to say is that fiscal management is one of the strengths, one of the things that this community can be proud of, in my opinion. I'm frankly angry and I'm frustrated. We sat in this room on January 22nd and were presented with what was a $477,000 projected deficit. And it tore this community apart. Cancellation of sports, cancellation of graduation, extracurricular activities, and in my opinion, we had a gun held to our head to write out a check for $477,000 right then, and we didn't. And instead we said we wanted to have verification of the deficit first. And between the non-existent deficit and the projected surplus, we're talking about a swing of nearly $1 million. And I know exactly how we got there. I read the report in great detail. If the General Assembly were having a debate about a $200 million problem or mistake in the State House, this would be a big story, wouldn't it? It would be two 38 studios. That's the scale of the problem that we're talking about in a town the size of North Smithfield, and of the deficit that we're talking about. So it is a big deal. And I think about what would $1 million buy in this community. It would buy an awful lot of textbooks that we need. It would buy an awful lot of technology that we need. It would fix a lot of potholes in this town that we need. And to me, it's unacceptable that we had such a swing, that we had this huge deficit that we were staring at January 22nd, or 27th, my mistake, January 27th. And today we're talking about a surplus of about the same amount. And with all due respect, Mr. Lindbergh, I do expect more of you as superintendent. We've heard about the former special ed director, the former finance director, and that's all well and good, but the buck stops at your desk, sir. And mine. And that's why we took the action that we did. So I am frustrated, and I'm very, very angry. I sat in that auditorium on February 10th, and I had the school committee's chair finger in my face, calling me a disgrace because I wouldn't support the idea of transferring the $477,000 over without first verifying the deficit. And now, after we do it, we discover that there is no deficit. And I understand all the reasons why, but I hold the administration accountable for that. And I'm frustrated on behalf of taxpayers in the community, and I'm frustrated on behalf of the students in the community, because we should be giving the students the very best possible education we can. And that includes updated textbooks. It includes upgrades in technology. And we also have, as a town council, a responsibility to make investments throughout the community to fix a building like we're sitting in right now, which is a disgrace. And the only way we're going to do that is we have accountability in our budgets. And this accounts for the biggest portion of the entire town budget. So, and it's not as if we haven't been here before. It was only 2011 we were looking at a $378,000 deficit. At that time, the council did just transfer the money over, and the school department ended with a surplus. At that time, the town, I wasn't here, the town ended up with a deficit as a result of that, and requested some of the money to be transferred back so that the town wouldn't run a deficit. And to your point, that's true. It was transferred, it was in their control, it never came back. So, the fact is, this happens again and again, and it frustrates me to no end. And I don't know who would want to do this job, because I certainly question whether I would want to do it again.
Mr. President, I don't have the luxury of being frustrated or angry publicly, in some degree personally. I will say that if you've taken the previous year out of context and if you went back and looked at the facts of that particular year, you would find that you were incorrect. It had more to do with the voting of the town council and the net maintenance of that was $60,000. You want to hold me accountable for the fact that the special education budget was cut and it didn't hold up. You can do that. However, you've taken everything out of context that was presented by Tom DeWalt in terms of what transpired in the year. Even if it was funded, it's still going to end up in deficit. So you can hold me accountable, but I'm equally disappointed in the fact that there's no recognition, even though we have said over and over again, that your budget process and timeline is seriously flawed. We had said over and over again in the last 2 years that the budget that we submit in December, which starts in September, has been clearly pointed out by these two gentlemen, experts in the field. Yet it falls on that list.
It doesn't fall on deaf ears. We understand the finance issue. I'm talking about how do we go from December 31st to March 31st and have $1 million swing.
Well, I think if you don't find that in the report,
I understand
if you don't find it in the report, then you shouldn't pay for it. Because it's pretty clear to me, and it said over and over and over again that this could end up on the short side too. They said repeatedly that budgeting is not a simple science, it's an art form. They also said that this could swing the other way. So this is what happens in school departments, and this is what they face all the time. So, I am disappointed in your comments, but I don't have the luxury of being angry and
You
frustrated.
can be angry and frustrated.
And candidly, we could not legally continue to run a budget when we're in deficit. They said very clearly, it's a no-win for Mrs. Markov. She did her job. She faced all kinds of accusations when she did her job. She made the call when she felt comfortable making the call. And what did these two gentlemen say? She made the right call at
Yes,
the right time.
she did.
Now, you're disappointed that we had to take action. Well, we had to take action because we have to pay bills. And we were told by our legal counsel that we had to take that action. We had no choice but to put a corrective action plan in place. So I'm sorry if you're disappointed and frustrated and angry. I think a lot of people are for a lot of different reasons, including the process that was employed last year. So, we are where we're at, and maybe there's an opportunity we can remedy something towards the end of the year, depending on how the school committee feels. But, if you want to pound the flesh, you're more than welcome to have it. Take it. But you know what? You need to take some responsibility too, sir. You really do. Because the process last year was tremendous.
Hearing that many of these issues, particularly some of the larger ones, are a function of people who may have been in their job before who weren't doing their job properly. And there's going to be accountability for that. Those folks aren't here anymore. And I expect more. I'm sorry, but I expect more.
Those folks aren't here.
Yeah.
Yes, those folks aren't here.
Mr. President, maybe they're not here because they've identified the issues.
I can't really go there.
That's right, so you can't go there. But here's my point, I want to get this up, okay? I told you last year in the budget process, it was not the way to do the 240. I implored you to reconsider. The majority decided to go elsewhere. Mrs. Marcotte had a job to do. She did her job. And from this council's point of view, did it admirably. She identified. If she had not identified it at that point, we wouldn't be here tonight at this point. In the meantime, they have an obligation under Rhode Island law to take as much corrective action as they deem necessary. So now you're accusing them of overcorrecting. That's what you're basically doing. And I don't think that that's right. I think we need to work together instead of pointing out where it was before, where it was after. Okay, part of that swing is the 240 we sent over there, because we promised. They fulfilled the promise, they counted on the money, we sent it over there. That's what the majority did. In the meantime, as soon as Mrs. Marcotte did her job, she needs to go through that budget and HR everything and anything to get to where they are. They haven't been able to process purchase orders from what I told. There was a freeze on everything, right down to every department, right down to every teacher. That had to come. That had to happen. That's because they understand state law as it applies to educational funding, and some others of us are just learning about it, and are just trying to understand it now. And this counselor, after 10 years, is still learning about it, but it's not easy. It's a different way of doing it. So they could very easily be sitting here still at $500,000. They could be sitting here at $1 million deficit. To their credit, they took a lot of steps to rebound. And if they didn't do that, both the town side and the school side would have been in a complete financial chaos. Now, there's things that they haven't funded this year, and there's things they've canceled. And those things are adding to the PEP problem, as I understand it. Okay? So, yeah, it happened, and yeah, it's a big swing. And yeah, it can be frustrating, Council President. But you ought to understand, after 10 years of experience, that's the way this is. What happened last year is what I warned against. Nobody took a solid look of the responsibilities that school committee had to do and equated that to a money to put it in a budget. All they did is level fund it, and when they play the games with the sports, we'll give them the 240. That's what you did with the budget. I voted a no on every single line item because finally, for once, you understood. And now I think you're coming to realize what I'm talking about. There's a right way and a wrong way of doing it. Let them do their job. Let's move forward. Let them identify what they need to do. Let's have a frank discussion on what money they need to do their job. We can have a frank discussion on what we can afford as a town, and we can move forward.
That's what needs to happen.
We have just a few minutes left. If there's any other comments, observations on the part of the council, and then we're going to move into the next agenda item. Anything further to add?
Mr. President, I do want to thank you for having us tonight. It's been a long year. The accusations and allegations that have been proposed over the last year at the State Department, we had no business, and nor did we reply publicly, nor would we ever get into that arena. To say it's taking its professional and personal toll is putting it mildly. I'd like you to reread the report when you have a chance. I'd like to have you see if there's any logically growth. I'd like you to please take a good, solid look at this, because to me, the accusations and allegations that were made were unfounded, and I appreciate their work, and I appreciate their recommendations that are going to help us make it better. But to continue to perpetuate that, I am disappointed, sir.
And I will say that despite the difficult year that it's been, we've also been able to work very collaboratively on the facilities issue, which is going to be a benefit to both the town and the schools. And I would like to suggest that perhaps after we all read the report, perhaps you and I and either Mr. LaFleur or Mr. Bonus and the town administrator can meet again and take the next step. Thank you.
Just so you know, we'll come back to, we go back just to them or just to you.
Okay.
Right? And we don't charge anything extra. We try to give back to the communities that use us. We thank you very much for hiring us to do this work, and if you need us for anything, we'll be there.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the responsible document for take under consideration making the next consultant limited liability corporation budget review of non-support school property.
Motion by Councilor Lewin, is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Yazbek. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll move for roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes. Motion for 5 minute recess. Moved by Councilor Yazbek. Second by Councilor Lewin. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Number 5, amendment to North Smithfield Comprehensive Plan, map B1 and B2, to allow portion of plat 17, lots 199, 142, 84, and 14 to be changed from residential suburban to highway district with appropriate pre-existing restrictions. This is listed as a joint public hearing with the planning board. Welcome, planning board. I presume that you've been called to order? Yes. Okay. And it's listed as discussion by council vote for action. All I will say is last several weeks. There was a planning board meeting that the two of us attended. We partnered to hear a new plan. And there's a number of procedural things that need to happen in terms of the comp plan, amendments to hearings, the addition of blocks and so forth, and then a vote on a zone change. With all that as background, I will turn to the town planner for more detailed explanation of that.
Tonight's presentation is based on significant changes in the plan and includes the recent purchase of lot 199, which changes the whole possibility for laying this site out. You will recall that there was a previous comprehensive plan amendment for lot 14 in plat 17. And that was withdrawn because we knew that this was going to be the one that we really wanted to pursue, or they would really want to pursue. So tonight, we'll change the comp plan options to include lots 140, plat 17, lots 142, 199, 84, and 14. And now each of these, only part of it is going to be changed. It's a fairly common process in business highway zoning to change only part of a lot. Typically, it's from the front of the property to a certain depth. So, with that said, we can begin this process. Tonight will be the first reading, and then the planning board will continue to their meeting, and you will continue to your next meeting. And that's the way it's going to shape out. This is a public hearing, and the next two that we're going to do tonight, the one on the zoning change for lot 14, will probably best continue it until the following meeting, so that everything will be lined up all at second reading. And the one after that, for the remaining three lots, 142, 199, and 84, that will be first reading, and then a continuation to the second reading at your next meeting.
So, just to be clear too, I think what we're talking about is doing some business this evening and then continuing business on May 19th.
That's right. And the planning board will continue their business on May 5th.
Councilor Walensky.
To Mr. Lombardi. Mr. Lombardi, we had a previous hearing where there were proposed changes to the planning map, and it was just particular this location. There was no motion or second to approve this and move forward, so I believe that it died. Is that correct? Now, this new, what's before us now is because it's a different plan?
No, I believe that this was continued. There was another matter that was not continued.
Does someone recall what that matter was? Mr. Harris, do you recall?
I believe the one that you did not continue on created a problem because you could have put yourself into a position for a constructive approval, in other words, not taking action over a certain period of time. So the attorney for Anchor wisely withdrew, and so that is off the record. We also withdrew before the planning board, so that is off the record. This is a new proposal involving 4 lots instead of 1.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
Mr. President, members of the council, my name is David Igliotti. I appeared before you before as well as the planning board on several occasions. When I was last before this council on March 17, 2014, there were 2 matters pending before the council at that time. One was the proposed zoning change amendment to lot 14, instead of lot 17, lot 14. That was, proposal was a request to change the entire lot from RS to BH. That public hearing was continued from that date to today's date, and it's still open for consideration and debate. And we'll present some information on that matter. We essentially are modifying that request to reduce our portion of assessment plat 17, lot 14, that we're asking for. Because it is a request of reducing the amount, we left it best to keep all the evidence on the record and keep the public hearing open. So that particular matter is still before you tonight. That's one matter. Other matter that we had before this council was a request to amend the comprehensive plan. That was withdrawn at that time, at the last meeting of 17. What's before you tonight, at our request, is the continuation of our request to amend assessment plat 17, lot 14, as revised, to only include a portion thereof to demonstrate for you, point out on the PowerPoint. In addition to that is a request to amend assessment plat 17, lot 199, a portion of that lot. Also a request to amend assessment plat 17, lot 84, a very small portion of that, and that's really a housekeeping matter. During this process, as a result of some very extensive survey work and engineering work, we found out that there was a sliver, and the engineer pointed out, of lot 84, assessment plat 17, lot 84, that was not BH. There's some MIP-RAP or some, the engineer will point that out. And finally, there was a request to amend assessment plat 17, lot 142, and allow that to become BH. That's what's before you tonight. And this is really, the components of this have been drawn out in some length and detail before the planning board. What we would hope to do tonight with this being the first reading with regard to assessment plat 17, lot 199, portion thereof, assessment plat 17, lot 142, and assessment plat 17, lot 84, as well as the revised portion of 14, is to just outline for you the information that we provided as revised since our last meeting. And then give, at a later date, on the 19th, we need to go back before the planning board to finish unfinished business there. And if, and only if we're successful there, then we will be back before you on the 19th for the second reading and for your consideration. But as much what we did prior to coming here tonight, and prior to going before the planning board on May 1st, we went before the planning board for a consultation on April 10th to really kind of ferret out really what ended up happening to be a very fortunate event for the project applicant. The planner has pointed out that the applicant was successful in purchasing assessment plat 17, lot 199, which really changed the dynamics of the project significantly. It allowed us to balance the interests of the neighbors as requested by the handout that has been passed around the previous and submitted to the record at one of your earlier meetings. And some of the highlights that pointed out that changed the plan was follows. One is there would no longer be any rear access at all on assessors plat 17, lot 14, not for emergency access or otherwise. So there was a concern about access in the way. We had originally limited it to emergency access only, and now the proposed revised plan will be no access on lot 14. In addition to that, there was a lot of discussion about a buffer zone along lot 14, the neighbors. We have actually revised the plan and suggested that we'd make a recommendation to the council that we not change the zoning at all for a 100-foot strip along the rear of lot 14. So it would not only be a buffer zone as far as infilling and screening, but it would also be a remaining residential. Now that does a couple things. One, it protects the interests of the neighbors. Two, it also provides that with regard to real estate values, they will always continue to abut a residential zone. Residential abutting residential. Residential is still being owned by one of Mr. Benoit's entities, unless there was some agreement with regard to a transfer of title for conservation, open space, or something that was negotiated, which has been discussed at the planning board. But no final discussion has been concluded in that regard, but it's our hope to reach an agreement with the planning board and then perhaps the council. So this idea of this 100-foot buffer would be screened, and during the future we'll have our landscape architect describe exactly how that will be accomplished. The other issue that happened was there was a lot of discussion about blasting on lot 14. We've now designed the plan, and I don't want to say me, but the engineers have designed the plan in such a way that there will be no change in topography on lot 14. Essentially, it will remain the way it is. It will be a higher elevation. It will essentially accomplish and be provided and supply some parking space for some inventory, as well as a storage building for some vehicles that require for cleaning the property, whether it's snow removal, that kind of thing. Other than that, the elevation would not be changed. There would be no blasting. Originally, we had a long discussion about blasting, how far, on the 19th of May, we'll come back before we're not blasting it. But basically, essentially, we have more than double the distance between the previous location of blasting and where there would be any blasting now, number one. Number two, we've reduced and moved the building from lot 14 all the way up to basically essentially entirely on the existing BH zone. There'll be no portion of the new building on lot 14 whatsoever. There'll be a small corner there is on lot 142, which is the sliver that I was talking about, that we're asking to, I think, 84, 142. Can't be able to point that out to you. A small corner that's on the presently existing RS zone that we're asking to change. The building, the parking is further away from, obviously, not only the neighbors, but also further away from the side yard as well. There was a discussion about, some of the neighbors along Sailfield Road. And as you can see, if you look at the map I've asked the engineer to put up, if you see the area designated in red, of that area, the area that is contains lot 14 and a portion of, I think it's 199, totals 3.8 acres that the applicant is willing to have not only remain designated RS, which obviously is valued, but also remain non-building. And post-construction of any business use, primarily the excess inventory lot, that area would remain untouched and actually infilled with additional screen and buffer. So that's 3.8 acres of value that the applicant has put on the table for the benefit of the neighbors. And the town's concerned with weighing the application in this regard. In addition to that, the new parking, the advent and purchase of lot 199 also allowed the applicant to actually reduce the amount of impervious area which is being used for parking. That's language that I learned from the engineer, and he'll testify to that shortly for you. The other interesting thing that the applicant is going to be able to do because of this proposal is, as a result of the parking, there's a couple of traffic problems at this location. One is the stacking of vehicles along Sailfield Road trying to get access onto 146. This proposal would provide tremendous relief to that stacking process, and our traffic engineer will testify to that on May 19th. Right now, that stacking causes some problems. In addition to that, the traffic engineer will present evidence to you that the DOT plan, both short-term and long-term, addresses this issue and essentially provides for a cloverleaf that would result in a perfect connection with the proposed access area on Sales Hill Road, both where the lot 142 exists now, as well as across the street, which is also owned by the applicant. So the only access on Sales Hill Road would be essentially abutting the applicant's own property. So on both sides of Sales Hill Road, there would be access to the applicant's property. And we can show you that roughly, and the engineer will testify to that. So what I'd like to do, just briefly, is just have the engineer in very specific terms just outline those components for you from an engineering perspective tonight. And then we're going to have a few comments, and then our plan would be to bring in the testimony of the various experts in this matter on May 19th, after the continuation of the May 15th meeting of the planning board. So those are the highlights of the major component changes of the plan. Many of them, in fact, all of them, have been directly in response to neighborhoods' concerns and comments, as well as the planning board's concerns and comments, and obviously go a great deal to balancing the interests of both the taxpayers who surround the property, as well as the taxpayer and various taxpayers who own the property. And that's the balancing test that obviously the council and the planning board have to do. They have to balance all the interests, not just one side or the other. And I do think the applicant, there was a lot of discussion about, habitat and things like that, and we presented evidence to the effect that while there is obviously some animals and wildlife that lives in this area, there's no special habitat identified or designated by the Department of Environmental Management that requires a special treatment. But certainly, like anyone, my client, Mr. Manning, is very sensitive to this concern of trying to maintain as much as we can. I think he's worked very hard with the conservation chairman. In fact, it was the conservation chairman for recommendation very early on, seeking a 100-foot buffer, which we were never able to accomplish, and would never have been able to accomplish, but for the purchase of lot 199 that happened between our last meeting and today. So I didn't need to be too long-winded, I thought a little explanation. Mr. Casali, the engineer, the chief engineer of the project, and he'll outline the key elements.
Before you do though, Councilor Zawinski has a question.
Mr. Gallows, you referred to stacking, was that the truck transports on
No.
46?
On Steels Hill Road,
Yeah.
right now, it's my understanding, and I'm not speaking to traffic engineer, I'm thinking.
Sure.
Let me pose it to Mr. Gallows and then try to get it. So what were you discussing about stacking?
It's my understanding that right now, there is access from the Nissan building that's like within 50 feet of the intersection.
Yeah.
Now, when the traffic is trying to come out of the Nissan building, Nissan access, the traffic coming down Sales Hill Road, trying to enter onto 146, there's like a conflict between them, they're too close to that intersection.
Okay.
The proposed plan moves the access 250 feet off of 146, which is going to match, not only does it now eliminate the stacking, because now you've got 250 feet from 146. Short term, long term, that 250-foot access matches the cloverleaf, which is on the plan right now, that's proposed by DOT. If you were to look at that cloverleaf, and it's actually not a complete cloverleaf, obviously, that's not my educated referral to a portion of it.
Okay, just trying to follow up, I know we're going to get testimony. So they're proposing going 200 feet up. Is that access going to be on lot 199?
No, 142.
142, that's actually not on 146. So 142, I see it. So the other property that Mr. Benoit owns, which is lot 15, which is proposed in the residential, correct?
That's supposed to remain residential is not part and parcel of this application request nor the application pending before the planning board.
And you mentioned property across the street, is that lot 40? YT property?
41, I think.
What is it?
I think it's 40 and 41 off the top.
Okay, so that was what used to be the cup and sauce at Pete
Correct.
property, right? Thank you.
Okay, so this is a joint public hearing with the planning board. Are there any questions?
Could I do one other thing, Mr. Chairman, before you do that? Just out of, since it is in anticipation of both this meeting, the planning board meeting, and our future public hearing, the applicant has provided, and I see at least one council have a booklet that represents the entire proposed package. And I know the council, this is a planning, again, it's a planning department presentation, but I do take into consideration health. And since it is a public meeting, as you notice, the booklet that has 12 sections, that's what it's 12 sections, that has, the text is going to have all the reports of the experts, proposed plan, but I would ask for it to be accepted as Exhibit A. Again, they're going to, we already have it, it's going to be testified to on May 19th, quite as much detail as the boards and the public sees. We ask this to be Exhibit A, and we have a full set of plans that the engineer's going to come out after the council.
And would Exhibit A and Exhibit B also be available? I'm guessing the answer is yes, in electronic form, so that we could make it available?
They will.
Okay.
It's my understanding that they have it all in the electronic form now?
It's with
They'll provide a separate list of council.
Well, if you go to the administration, then the administration can put it up on the town's website, so everyone can have access.
May I do that technically? Yes. A would be the 12 section binder, which requires.
The hard copy should be considered to the clerk as to Exhibit A and Exhibit A. And the electronic will go to the administration for access.
We'll make sure that, just because we're going to refer to that in much greater detail between now and the time of the So, I guess with that, I would ask Mr. Casali, and Mr. Chairman, I asked this to the planning board and on the council proceedings, does the council normally want experts qualified and sworn in?
I don't think it's our practice to. We get testimony, but it's not. We don't have it.
I just wanted to make sure, I wanted to offer that process if you want.
President, members of the council, good evening. Just for the record, my name is Joe Casali. I'm a registered professional engineer. I'm the office of 300 Post Road in Warwick. My name is President. I know that most of you have seen this presentation before. We have had subsequent changes to this event of Mr. Benoit being able to buy lot 199, and I'd like to quickly go through that for you. So again, we know where the site is on 146 and Sales Hill Road, and you can see that outside perimeter, which is actually 11 lots, interior lots that is owned by Mr. Benoit and Benoit Realty. Looking at the green lots, Mr. Chairman, we're here focusing tonight on just 7 of those 11 lots. So this existing thin lot over here is not part of the application, or these 2 corner lots, or this middle intermediary lot that currently houses an existing single-family home, just to bring the application into context. In terms of your existing zone map, you can see the blue line which separates your residential district to the, which would be the west or the top of the page, and your business highway district down below. We're all very familiar with the site with the existing Anchor Subaru dealership as well as the Anchor Nissan dealership. We have had freshwater wetlands delineated by a wetlands biologist, notably Natural Resource Services, Mr. Scott Bradley. You can see, Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of wetland complexes. These are small enough where they don't have an additional 50-foot jurisdictional buffer with them. In this complex over here to the south has with it, it's really an intermittent stream. It's actually, it's exfiltration of an existing well, and so DEM puts that additional 100 feet on either side. You can see that green buffer, meaning that those areas are held to the higher standards in terms of environmental protection, and any and all of the drainage and permitting are going to be subsequent to DEM's review of approval. In terms of the topography, again, the site moves rapidly from west to east. So basically, the entire site moves downward through the existing wetlands. There's a newly constructed detention basin, and ultimately everything makes its way under 146 through some lost culverts. Our proposal, Mr. President, is that's the 30,000 square foot Anchor Subaru dealership. Which is going to be right next to the existing Anchor Subaru dealership, which we'd like to have repurposed. There's also talks about a future expansion to the existing Nissan dealership, about 5,000 square feet. That addition, this is area that I just popped up to you, that's the additional flat top that we want to create that's going to be all one level, that we want to have both the pedestrian and the vehicular interfaces where our clients and our customers can walk about the campus and be able to look at the inventory that's there. The new access road that Attorney Igliozzi spoke of really moves that existing conflict and moves that access road up about 250 feet, which parallels with that proposed jump handle that's coming off that you saw in the DOT 10% drawings. And then we have the two subsequent layers up top, Mr. President. You can see that is the second layer where we're going to have some inventory parking, and then finally the third layer that comes up, and that's how we're traversing through some of the winding access roads. And that's the existing, or that's the proposed, 10,000 square foot storage building. As has been said multiple times, Mr. Benoit performs a lot of the activities there and all of the snow removal. So these are the maintenance vehicles that we want to just get under one roof and we want to house them in a storage building. In terms of stormwater, the approach is very similar to the past. We're going to create different stormwater management areas that are ultimately going to discharge into the wetlands, and which will make their way under 146. The design will be in accordance with all of the state manuals as well as the local codes here in the town of North Smithfield. In terms of septic, we like to tie, Mr. President, we like to tie all the buildings together. We have each one of the buildings having their own pre-treatment in terms of a septic tank, and then there'll be some type of small lift station, and we'll go to some type of proprietary device, an innovative alternative device for this particular design. This is an AX100. This is a bottomless sand filter. It's those above ground systems that a lot of us here in Northern Rhode Island are accustomed to seeing. And then you can see the two proposed well locations. The proposed public well with a 200-foot radius kept within our property line and an alternate location. This will be subject to the review and the approval of the Department of Health, this being a public well and having the increased setback. That's the buffer area that Attorney Igliozzi spoke of. It's minimum 100 feet in width, Mr. President, and you can see how it wraps right around through the new lot that was just purchased, and then that's where it cuts off where that existing single-family home is. So that area in that orange, that burnt orange color, is about 3.8 acres. The green area is the new area we're asking on the 4 lots to have the portion of them changed from that residential suburban district to the business highway. So in essence, we are asking that you move that zone change line from where it exists today, going a little ways upwards or to the west. When you look at the 4 lots in question, there is a portion of lot 14 that is being changed. There is a portion of lot 199, the remainder of 142, and as Attorney Igliozzi alluded to, it's tough to see at this scale, but there's a little sliver of lot 84. For some reason, it's almost spot zone in that residential zone. So part of the application is to clean that up a little bit. Looking back at the former proposal, this is what we were here before you back in April, Mr. President. You can see the building in the back with a proposed addition. That was the door part, the 10,000 square foot storage area. And you can see some of the distances, and I know that's a little bit tough stuff for me to read from here, but roundly they were anywhere from about 475 to about 500 feet from the proposed building to the closest dwellings. Under the new scenario, we're increasing that distance by about 200 feet. We're up in the high 600s, close to, some of them are over 700 feet from the closest dwelling. Looking again at the original design, you can see the impervious areas and the distances to some of the dwellings. I think the closest here is somewhere it's about 140, 150 feet. On the proposed design, that impervious area, now that we have that minimum 100-foot buffer, that too increases, I think, is about 230 feet. Some of the other differences in the old design with the new one, and again, a lot of this was made, was now made available to us at this big square. We can now move some of this infrastructure around. We're proposing about 5.4 acres of impervious on that back lot, that lot 14. Under the new design, we've reduced the impervious areas by almost an acre. We're proposing about 4.4 acres of impervious on that back lot. The permitting process, as you know, Mr. President, is quite a long one. As Attorney Fleury spoke, we've been before the planning board for our consultation. We were before them last Thursday for our master plan. There's possible, we're here tonight for the first reading of the zone change. What you're not seeing here is, depending on the some of the outcomes, we may need to petition the zoning board for additional dimensional relief. But should we receive the zone change, Mr. President, we have to then apply to DEM for 2 state permits. One for the wetlands, one for the septic. DOH is going to want to take a look at the wells because they're public. DOT is going to want to look at all of the ingress and egress as well as all of the drainage. We have to meet back with the fire marshal again for some of the fire protection, including the cistern and the FEC connection, and then once again back before planning for preliminary and final plan review. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions of you or members of the council, Mr. President.
And I would add to that, members of the planning board, since we are in a joint meeting, are there any questions from members of the council or the planning board?
Section 11, Mr. President. Section 11, you show a historic wellness serves as the head of the intermittent stream. There's a picture of it. Is that part of your proposed intermittent well, or is that proximity to it? Where is it?
Yeah, it looks like, when we walk the site, it looks like there was an old dug well. And what you see is the remains of the top course of stone. And the water is just exfiltrating right out and it's running. And because it's moving, it meets the classic definition from the topography, from the vegetation we saw, and from the soils where we took the transect to classify it as a wetland. We currently have an application pending before DEM to verify the edge. We want to make sure that they agree with our biologists and with that 100-foot jurisdictional setback. But I can't frankly see how they're going to pull it in and out.
Was that what you identified as the seasonal stream flow earlier? Can you get back to that slide?
Yeah, so what you really have in there is, you really have 2 wetland complexes. You have a small forested wetland. I think he labeled that as complex F. And because it's less than 3 acres, it doesn't carry that 50-foot jurisdictional buffer. But in that wetland complex is that old well, that old dug well. Especially in the high water season like we're in now, a very, very wet spring, that water's exfiltrating right out of the ground and it's moving. We fully believe that DEM is going to agree with our findings that we need that additional protection because of that's going to be classified as an intermittent stream.
Roughly the laser can you point where you think it's likely on that? I know it's different.
It's right in the middle here, and so the 100-foot goes right around. That's the 100-foot radius, and it probably only runs. When I was in the field, it ran maybe 15, 18 feet. It's not a long, winding river, but it's going to run as the water pushes itself out.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? So, from a procedural standpoint, I'll turn to both the solicitor and the town planner. We have technically 3 public hearings this evening on all related matters. And so it may be that the comments that folks have, the questions they have, will be in any one of them? I don't think we can combine them into.
Yes, they're all the same issues, so I would suggest that people who want to make comments use this one particularly, because the planning board will not be here after this one.
Okay.
They're not involved in the zoning plan.
And so, what I would ask is a couple of things, because I know there's many people here and would like to be heard on this issue. And so, in order for us to be able to hear everybody, I would ask that folks limit their time to approximately 3 minutes. It's not that short a time period. And I would also ask that you direct any questions or comments through the chair and not to other folks. And just keep your comments to the issues, and try not to repeat something that has been said at a previous public hearing because it is on the record. So with all that having been said, I would ask if there's anybody who would like to step forward and speak. Young man. Would you please just come to the podium though?
Sure.
And just state your name, please, for the record. Welcome to democracy.
Hi, I'm Ryan Johnson. I'm 10 years old and I live in Woonsocket. And we say no to resurrecting and oh my god, somebody just randomly chose me. I'm like just standing here. So like I have no idea. Okay, we just say no to resurrecting. So this is it.
To rezoning. To rezoning. And did we get the young man's name for the record? Could you state your name again, please, for the record?
Ryan Thompson and I'm 10 years
Ryan
old.
Thompson. Ryan Thompson, 10 years old. Hey, Ryan, where do you live?
Woonsocket.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Is there anybody else who would like to be heard for the record? Ms. Sarah?
I would like to be heard for the record. Let me go over here, just to point out that I do not agree that this should be changed to DH exactly. I think it should be changed to DH with appropriate transitional restrictions. And that means whenever you're in a transition situation, you find the restrictions that best fit that particular zoning, just as we did in the Silver Pines area, in the new area. We decide what needs to be restricted. That goes on the books. That final decision goes on the books. And it's actually a separate zone in terms of what it allows or doesn't. So I just want to point out that there was no mention of appropriate transitional restrictions, and it needs to be there. And ultimately, it's the town council, with the input of the planning board, this is a matter of the way it's being heard, that determines what those appropriate transitional restrictions would be.
I know that we still have quite a road ahead of us in terms of opportunities to be heard, hearings, planning board, town council, maybe the zoning board of review. This is not the last bite of the apple by any stretch. Unless there's anybody else who would like to be heard. Source?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question first. Am I to understand that you're not necessarily going to vote this evening on the zone change?
That's my understanding.
Well, okay, I want to address the decision by the comprehensive, by the planning board. And I have a written statement, I have an extra copy, should I give that to anybody?
To the clerk, if you would, please.
All right, regarding the proposed zone change from RS to BH. The planning board's January 16th decision that Andrew Subaru's request for a zone change from residential to business highway is consistent with the comprehensive plan, quotes section F, economic development, as reason for approval, but it appears to have ignored section D, land use, which states, prevent incompatible non-residential uses in residential neighborhoods. All zone changes hereinafter proposed shall be in accordance with the recommendations of this comprehensive plan as planning board meeting of May 1st, town planner Mr. Erickson read the portion of my April 23rd email to the town council referring to the land use section of the comprehensive plan and suggested that the testimony presented by the applicant's experts met the requirements of sections D4A land use. I disagree. The expert testimony presented has only addressed mitigation of negative impacts on the abutters. There has been no evidence presented to establish that this zone change will be compatible with and supportive of the surrounding neighborhood. I have been told that the comprehensive plan has many goals and must be viewed in its entirety. I agree, but I ask, where in the plan does it state that one section takes precedence over another? Where does it state that economic development supersedes land use? I contend that this proposed zone change does not satisfy the requirements set forth in the land use section of the comprehensive plan, and therefore should be denied. If you have questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Stewart? Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Back to you.
Hello, Rachel Savoy, 138 Salesville. Okay. We've heard from many of the experts hired by Bob and White to convince the town council that this growth is beneficial to all and will not affect the quality of life of the neighborhood. We have not yet heard from any expert stating his monopolizing 24 acres of dealership is a company requirement, as was suggested. He was very concerned about his competitive size in North Attleboro. Village Nissan sits on a 4.74 acre lot. Subaru North Attleboro is a 6 acre lot with a 22,000 square foot office building showroom. Benoit Realty already has 13 acres of buildable land, which I'm pretty sure is plenty big enough to build a $30,000 square foot showroom to meet any obligations that he might have. How much more will he be paying in taxes once his project completes and he has a huge parking lot? There are 12 abutters and 3 vacant lots surrounding this eyesore project. The assessed value of the homes are $3,306,000. As taxpayers, we are paying $52,500. If this passes, our property value decreases and our property value decreases by a mere 10%, the town will lose $5,250. And this could actually be, it could actually be a higher rate, higher percentage. These figures do not include the properties across the street on Sales Hill Road, which will most likely also decrease in value. Watching the PowerPoint presentation, I noticed that not one slide shows the current dealership as it stands today. And the presentation, if you look to the right side of the dealership, the Subaru dealership, it looks like it's underdeveloped land. There's nothing there. But currently, that's all developed and there's, I don't know, a couple hundred cars. Right now, it gives the impression that it's much smaller than what it actually is. If you look at that whole right side, that's filled with cars. And I'm just wondering if you've asked yourselves, why such a big dealership? Why? Could it be that this dealership is also going to be used for storage or distribution for other dealerships? Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to address Paul Stewart's comments, because we addressed them in the planning board meeting, and
refers to the role of the town council, not the planning board. Planning board made a decision about consistency with the comp plan. And now, in the zoning process, the town council has to determine whether the final agreement that they reach, or understanding that they reach, is compatible with and supportive of the surrounding neighborhood. Now, recall Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. It just wasn't about the residential people who lived nearby. It went to the post office, the baker, a number of commercial businesses. So if you look at that site, on two sides, it's residential. On the front and part of the side and the other side, it is a commercial operation, business highway. And the question is it supportive to the business highway use? There, the question is, the answer is absolutely yes. Having two dealers, two-part dealership, two-vehicle dealership, next to down the street from a Honda dealership, everybody benefits from that because that becomes the place to go. So we can just put aside the issue of the neighborhood that happens already to be PH. And then we look at the remaining section with the 100-foot buffer, hopefully a conservation easement. That, I think, is going to have to be worked out with the planning board before we go any further at the next meeting. And that's what it means, that you look at the surrounding neighborhood, find out whether it is compatible with and supportive of.
I do want to be mindful, and I appreciate your clarifications of things that are said, but I want to be mindful that if there are people that want to speak and haven't spoken, I want to hear from you. I think we want to hear from you. So this is that chance. I'm also mindful that it's 9:32. We have a time constraint to work with, so I just want to try to do my job of keeping the discussion moving. Sir, Michael.
Michael Thompson, 152 Sayers Hill Road. I'll make this quick, and I know you guys are on time limits and stuff. A couple of things that were brought up at the planning board. We had some comments made about wildlife and what was basically a habitat area where they would be able to survive or do survive, and lighting issues and stuff. At the planning board, I submitted some pictures and emailed them to the planning board. I wanted to have this opportunity I had copies made of those, and if it's acceptable to the town council, I'd like to submit these. I have copies for each one of you, so that you can see exactly what we're talking about, if you don't mind. First picture is of the deer that are in the area. There's a total of about 9 that live in the area right now that provide all of us plenty of enjoyment. This is also a lighting in the area, and that's what we're dealing with lighting. Yeah, the deer love the pool, and the trampoline is their favorite.
Mr. Thompson, how close are these two? This is probably right out the back door, right?
That swimming pool is exactly 14 feet from my deck, which is attached to my house. So those deer are within 35, 40 feet of my house. There's off to the side, which you can't see in the picture, there's a volleyball court that we have, a sand volleyball court that in the fall time we pile our leaves in for the kids to play in. The deer sleep in the volleyball court. I get up in the morning to take my dog out, and they wake up, get up, stand there and look at us while she does her thing, and usually just kind of hang out in the backyard with me. It's great to get up in the morning and enjoy that. I'm sorry, if this plan goes forward and the zones are changed and this construction is done, I cannot foresee that in my children's future, being able to get up in the morning and see that. We have turkeys, we have foxes. I could bring you pictures. And these pictures I took recently. I have pictures dating back, if you want them, going all the way back 3 years from when these were spotted fawns that were just brand new babies, and we watched them grow to full maturity. So it's not like they all of a sudden just show up once in a while. They're there year round. They live there. They might not know it, that it's not supposed to be where they're supposed to live, but they do. The other picture of the lighting is what I see every night in my backyard. A couple of years ago, they expanded back further their parking lot, close, and I mean, if you see on this, my property is one that the extension where that circular or square parking lot goes back. Ours is the property that abuts that area where they've already come back. If you stand in my backyard at the present time, even without it being dark, you can stare at all the cars. I can read license plates if they were on those cars in their parking lot from my backyard standing in my property. It's that close now. The 100-foot that he's talking about, that he was so gracious, we appreciate that. Don't get me wrong, we're not unsympathetic of that. But the fact of the matter is, when you start realizing what 100 feet is and you're standing in somebody's yard looking at 100 feet sounds like a lot when you're standing here. When you're standing in my backyard and you see where the orange flags are, 100 feet ain't squat. It's nothing. You know, we have right now probably close to 400 feet, and I can see the cars. And as you can see in the pictures, that's the lights at night that I see in my backyard when I try to go out and sit in my yard at night and enjoy the peace of the quiet earth. We have a fireplace in our backyard to enjoy. If you're going to bring a parking lot within 100 feet of my property, the lights shining down, even if they ain't going down, it's not going to matter. You're going to have reflective light off the cars themselves shining into our backyard. It's going to light it up. If you've ever been to any dealerships or anything in the area at nighttime when they've got their lights on, it's like a Walmart product. It lights up everything. The whole area around it is lit up. I've noticed that there's a number of dealerships, as Rachel has spoke to in the area and stuff. Most of the ones that I've traveled to look at and see are not abutted to any type of rural residential area like this. They have other businesses around them that are buffer zones going into. And I mean, even if you look at Metro Honda, or Majestic Honda just down the street, I mean, it seems like they took a lot more care around their property with keeping everything more accustomed to the area that it was already in. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. We're trying to balance this public hearing tonight to make sure that we're hearing from people. We've heard from many of you before, and it's fine. We want to hear your opinions. But I just ask that if you have come before the council and shared an opinion, that you don't need to do it again for us to understand that you don't support it. What we're asking for really is new information. Based on the plan, for example, that's been presented to the planning board, if there's something about that we didn't have a chance to say before, that's really the kind of thing that we're looking for. Just appreciate everybody's patience, because otherwise we won't be able to cover all the ground. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Members of Council. I'm Sean Kelly, 95 Sales Hill Road. Mr. Erickson has just pointed out, and I've made my views clear in the past, that I was against this from the beginning. Mr. Erickson pointed out tonight that it's up to the town council as to whether or not that section that Mr. Solis pointed out is consistent with the comprehensive plan. If we go back to the fourth iteration of the first slide that Mr. Casale presented tonight, that shows the current EH zone, you'll notice that there's a piece that juts back probably about, if I had to guess, I'd say it's about 450 feet off of 146. It steps back quite a bit of a distance from where the traditional EH zone is going down 146 from north to south. That already sticks back that one. If you bring it back to where it is now, that yellow line is approximately 900 to
when Mike gets this change, he says, I own the home behind me, I own the home beside me. Those two homes that he owns pays taxes. If he gets the okay, apparently you might have to give him the okay. So those homes that don't come down, they're going to be parking lots. Route 146 auto sales on 146. He owns residential land behind his dealership, which some of the trees are coming down now. And I'm sure that's going to be changed to commercial, which he's purchasing in the house on 146, which, you know, where does this come to an end? And the way you know, if you give one person the okay, this is just a no. We need to vote no for this before this gets out of hand.
Diane Olivier, 157 Sales Hill Road. My husband and I came from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and a noisy siren-filled day in and day out. Lots of drugs. We finally got out of there and moved to Smithfield. We love Sales Hill Road. We love the quaintness. You know, we love the country of it. And I mean, I was like so thrilled when I saw the first deer in my life that wasn't behind cage. Anyway, just asking, please stop advancing. Please don't take away from our neighbors and us. Thank you very much.
Joseph, 15 Valley Drive. I just want, I don't know, I apologize if this has been said before, but have you considered, the planning board or council considered what happens if Anchor Subaru goes out of business to this newly rezoned BH land? What other business, what if you open the door to, other than a dealership that just parks cars there? You're opening the door to something you don't know about. Should stay residential. The other thing is the proposed improvements to the intersection. Rhode Island Department of Transportation, well, they have no money. I don't know when that's going to happen. So you can count on that. If there are improvements that are going to be made, they should be made before any zoning changes. It's already a bad usage.
Well, this next gentleman is coming up. I'll just point out that in 15 minutes, we'll need to take a vote to extend the meeting because our rules say we can only go till 10 unless we have a unanimous vote. And we still, as I mentioned, have two other items that are public hearings related to this.
Mark, 77 Sales Hill Road. Along the same lines as the intersection was just spoken about, it was put up at the last meeting about how the DOT is going to rework that intersection. Keeping in mind it has nothing to do with their project. Whether that business is there or not, if the state can come up with the money and decides to fix that intersection, it doesn't have anything at all to do with the business. So they can put up all the slides they want, how it would work great for them, but it's inconsequential. It doesn't matter. It's not their issue. It's the traffic pattern. Secondly, every single citizen here is here because they believe in this. They don't want it. They're here of their own free will. I've left my children many nights and tucked in by the mother without me there because I believe strongly in this. Everyone on the other side is here because they've been paid to. Whether or not they truly believe in it, I don't know. But there's not one person here, not one citizen, who's getting paid to be here. I think that shows strongly how we really feel about it.
Okay, so hearing no further comments,
Could I respond to Mr. Erickson's rebuttal of what I said?
You can respond to me.
Okay, obviously, Mr. Erickson and I don't have the same definition of a neighborhood. He's saying that the Honda dealer down the street, which is what, half a mile away, and the used car dealer diagonally across the street have the same importance as abutters in a residential area, in a residential zone. I find that faulty reasoning. It just doesn't make sense to me that you can equate businesses on the other side of the highway and down the street as being supportive, that this project is supportive of them, when you've got abutters that are going to be affected greatly with, you know, all the things that we've mentioned, traffic and noise and lighting and wells and septic systems that could be affected by blasting. Yes, I've never heard that before. I just don't think it makes sense to say that it's supportive because there's a Honda dealer half a mile down the street.
It's up to the town council as to how they want to weigh the various parts of the neighborhood. That is not my position. In economic terms, Honda is very much a part of the automotive neighborhood there. So your job as town council is to find out how you want to weigh each part of it. I am not promoting, I'm not promoting, I just want to see a clear discussion. And the facts need to be on the table. That's your role as town council, not, as been said time and again, the planning board, and the planning board will do it correctly.
Thank you for clarification. At this time, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to May 19th, to consider this the first reading of the amendment to the North Smithfield Comprehensive Plan, map D1 and D2, to allow portions of the flat 17 lots, 199, 142, 84, and 14 to be changed from residential suburban to highway business with appropriate transition restrictions. Moved by Councilor Zawinski, is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Yabnak. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I ask for a roll call.
Sal? Yes. Mr. Bean? Yasba?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries. Which brings us to, yes, good point. The town clerk has reminded me to remind all of you, the next meeting of the town council on May 19th will be held at the North Smithfield Middle School. It's in part because we're going to have a police promotion at the beginning at 7 p.m. We have more space. So if you're marking your calendar for the 19th, please go to the middle school. It'll be posted and so forth. The next item on the agenda is item number 6, amendment to North Smithfield zoning ordinance map. A, petition to rezone property described as assessors plat 17 lots 14, located off of Eddie's Allen Highway, from residential suburban to business highway, North Realty LLC. And we have as a continuation of a public hearing and discussion by council votes or other action. And what I would propose, and people can certainly speak to lot 14, but the next item on the agenda is the same thing, but lots 199, 142, and 84. So my recommendation would be, if you want to speak on this matter, why don't we bring it to the next one, you can make the same point. Unless anybody wants, whatever reason, to speak slowly on it, it's the same issue, different lots. So then at this point, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on this item to also to May 19th at the middle school. And is this being considered the first reading as well? Right. Treated as the first reading. Moved by Councilor Yasbak. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilor Alves and Councilor Zawinski. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I ask for a roll call vote.
Sal? McGee? Bianca?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Fryland?
Yes, motion carries, which now brings us to the same topic, different lots. Item number 7, amendment to North Smithfield zoning ordinance map. A, petition to rezone property described as Assessor's Plat 17, Lot 199, 142, and 84, located off Edgar Highway from residential suburban to highway business. Business highway. RB North Smithfield Realty, Anchor Automotive Realty LLC, and Remote Residential Realty LLC. This is listed as the first public hearing, discussion by council voter or the action. So on the issue of amending the zoning ordinance map for the lots, that have been amended, both this one and the certainly the other one as well. Is there anybody who would like to be heard? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing, treat this as a first reading, to May 19th, 2014 at the middle school.
So
Moved by Councilor Zelinski, is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Yazdak and Councilor Al. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a roll call vote.
Sal? McGee? Bianca? Mrs. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Fryland?
Yes, motion carries. So, May 19th, Smithfield Middle School, and I believe that we are likely to have this be item number 2 when we turn that evening, and I'm expecting this first agenda item will take approximately 40 minutes. So we start at 7 o'clock, we're looking at starting at approximately 7:40. Now, in terms of aligning people to come and speak before. Yes.
Based on the vote, I understood, and I certainly agree with the concept that the continuation of the public meeting about lot 14, we treat it as a first reading because we indicated we were reducing the size of it. Is that why you did that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want us to provide you, we can provide a description of that reduced size for the record because that's what we're asking. The original is the whole lot.
Right.
Do you want me to provide an engineer description? Because it's included in another portion of the package, but that was that last.
That would be appropriate for the meeting on the
For the meeting,
19th. That would be
just
fine.
because it's consistent with what you voted on.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you all for being here. The next item is discussion by, item number 8, discussion by council vote or other action on resolution requesting General Assembly action allowing the town of North Smithfield to stabilize taxes for Rankin Estates. And I will tee this up and then invite the solicitor to add anything to it. This is on the agenda because, I'm trying to remember the date, the council took action to settle the inheritance and proof lawsuit. And we did it through a process of mediation. There was one acknowledgement in the evening that we took that action. Anybody remember the date? March 12th. So it was a special meeting. And there was acknowledgement that one of the items in the settlement agreement called for freezing the taxes on the property in question until such time as the applicant filed an master plan. And it was revealed to us that we couldn't do that. We couldn't fulfill that that part of the settlement agreement without getting General Assembly action. The General Assembly had to approve our ability to do that. And so the attorneys representing the town in the case, Michael DeSisto and Patrick Doherty, said that they would prepare both legislation for that as well as a resolution that they would request from the town council in support of that legislation so that it could be introduced and passed. The thing that I want to point out is that the law itself, if it passes the legislation, does not mandate that the town reduce taxes or stabilize them on that property. It merely gives us the authority to do so, which would make the settlement agreement that we agreed to possible. Correct. And we had a memo provided to us by the attorneys along with the resolution and with the legislation. I know that the solicitor has recused from this particular paper from a procedural standpoint. Do you have anything to add? Okay. Okay.
Mr. President, Mr. President?
Yes.
If I may reiterate, I had a conversation with Attorney DeCesso of the Trust, as well as Patrick Doherty, our legal counsel on this, and I just wanted to reiterate what you said. This does make it possible. This is not accepting the terms because there's some of these terms. And so basically, this just gives the town the right to go around General Assembly and to get this so that if we do decide to stabilize taxes, we may be able to. It is not accepting what is proposed. You said it much more eloquently than I did, but.
So we have
And maybe it's because I'm on a different time zone still. We already agreed to certain stipulations. This just allows us to carry out those stipulations. So with all due respect to the council, that's already occurred. This just allows it to go forward.
correct.
Well, then there's a problem here because I've been advised by council not to go into detail why, but there's some legal matters here that I should not discuss in public. It's just that I will be supporting bringing this to the General Assembly for the, and it does not bind us to Mr. Yamba. I'll tell you, if we go to an executive session, maybe we can discuss it. That would help schedule, of course.
So we have a resolution that's been prepared by the town's legal counsel in this manner, not the solicitor. But I presume you review this form and attest the fact that the clauses are required format. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution for the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantation requesting General Assembly action allowing the town of North Smithfield to stabilize taxes for Rankin Estates.
So,
moved by Councilor Zawinski. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Yazdat. Is there any further discussion?
Discussion. Did Mr. Doherty approve the form? Yeah. He signed the one. Okay, it wasn't signed on my copy. Thank you.
So we've had a motion and seconded discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Gonzalez? McGee?
Yes.
Yazbat?
Yes.
Mr. Zalinski?
yes.
Savage?
Yes, motion carries. At this time, I would ask for a 15-minute extension.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Zawinski. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Alves. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gonzalez? Yes. Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazbat?
Yes.
Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Mr. Clary?
Yes, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is item number 9, continuation of public hearing on proposed charter amendments listed as discussion by council vote for other action on proposals. At our last meeting on May 5th, we passed a number of proposals and forwarded them to the General Assembly. Actually, the charter still requires General Assembly approval, but we did pass them in anticipation of submitting the language to the Secretary of State, I believe sometime in August, June or August, to be put on the ballot. The one that we did not take action on that evening, because there's still some questions about whether it was legal or not, was a proposal by the town administrator to add 2 people to the makeup of the school committee. So there would still be 5 elected, but there would be 2 appointed, and those would be coterminous with the term of both the town administrator and the town council. One would be selected by the town administrator, one would be selected by the town council. And with that as background, I would just ask if either the town administrator or the town solicitor have any comments on what we have before us.
I just have something else that what we have, but this was emailed to me. This is what I learned.
Okay.
So,
I think that was what was in our packets.
I had 3 iterations of that in my packet.
okay.
So one with green font, one with black, and one with handwritten notes on it.
Why don't I read for the record the one that was in our packets, so we have a clear understanding, but we can all follow along with whatever versions we have. Article 14, School Department, Section 1, Membership Term. There shall be a school committee consisting of 7 members, 5 of whom shall be elected at large at the a regular biennial election in an even number of years to serve a term of 4 years and until his successor is elected and qualified. The candidates elected at subsequent elections shall be placed on the ballot in one column in alphabetical order, and the candidates with the largest number of votes shall be elected. In addition, candidates elected thereafter shall be for 3 or 2 members of the school committee as may be required to fill the vacancies caused by the expiration of the terms. 2 members shall be appointed to serve 2-year terms, coterminous with the town council. One appointee shall be selected by the town administrator, and the second appointee shall be selected by a majority vote of the town council. If the appointed member selected by the town administrator resigns, the town administrator shall appoint a replacement to serve the balance of the term. If the appointed member selected by the town council resigns, the town council shall appoint a replacement to serve the balance of the term. That's the language we have before us. I don't believe we had any others that we didn't take action on last time. This was the sole one. And I believe there was also a question of whether or not it was legal for us to take this action without having General Assembly approval, and the solicitor has researched that, and I'll turn it to you for
What happens is, it's changing the charter. Voters vote on it. If it's approved, it will go to the General Assembly for ratification. There is Rhode Island general laws which dictate how a school board is set up, and then there's exceptions. So Providence would have an exception, Woonsocket, and there's another town. So it would have to go Central Falls. So then it would have to go before the General Assembly for it to be ratified. I think that's what happened in Woonsocket.
So it's perfectly legal for us to go through this process this evening, take a vote, and then have it ratified by the General Assembly if the voters of the town approve it.
And then the General Assembly has to approve it. They may not agree with what it is.
Right. Are there any questions? Comments?
Mr. President, just one comment. I know the clerk brought it to my attention. Does it make sense striking out, however, and I do actually brought it to my attention, however, in the elections of 1969 only, it identifies how it will be run from there on. I thought it made sense by striking that, but if other people don't think it makes sense, then maybe we should have a discussion.
I think I was both the person who suggested striking it and then was the person who raised the concern about the fact that by striking it, that next sentence seems a little awkward or out of place. And, you know, it was the issue of the reference to 1969. I thought it was an opportunity for us to clean it up a little bit, but in retrospect, maybe having the language referring to 1969 actually provides some context.
And I have a copy of this.
With the 1969? Yes. Could we have a copy of that so that we can review it before?
Is that clean text? Jim, is that clean text?
It's just
Black and white now.
Okay, let's just read it so we know.
Yeah, I'll read it back and so we can all follow along.
I think it's just the clean text.
Yeah, I think it is, but
So, we scratched out on it, wrote in either, is that how it was?
Well, that's what we talked about, because the elections were transferred.
Yeah. No, just leave it. Okay.
So I will quickly just reread this again for clarity. There shall be a school committee consisting of 7 members, 5 of whom shall be elected at large at the regular biennial elections in an even number of years to serve for a term of 4 years and until his successor is elected and qualified. However, in the elections of 1969 only, the 3 candidates with the largest number of votes shall be elected for 4 years. The next 2 candidates in vote totals shall be elected for a term of 2 years. Thereafter, the candidates elected at subsequent elections shall be placed on the ballot in one column in alphabetical order, and the candidates with the largest number of votes shall be elected. In addition, candidates elected thereafter shall be 3 or 2 members of the school committee as may be required to fill the vacancies caused by the expiration of the terms. 2 members shall be appointed to serve 2-year terms coterminous with the town council. 1 appointee shall be selected by the town administrator, and the second appointee shall be selected by a majority vote of the town council. If the appointed member selected by the town administrator resigns, the town administrator shall appoint a replacement to serve the balance of the term. If the appointed member selected by the town council resigns, the town council shall appoint a replacement to serve the balance of the term. Is that said?
So the other three iterations are no longer window, it's just one.
Correct. One that's just read for the record,
Okay.
if people so choose. Is there a motion to accept this proposed amendment as drafted?
I'll make a motion to deny changing it at all. Leave it the way it is. That's my motion.
Motion by Mr. Yazbek to deny this change as proposed and leave it as it is, including the reference to odd numbered years. Okay, that's the motion.
See it in it, it's what we currently have.
Motion by Mr. Yazbek, is there a second? Are there any other motions?
Take a motion to accept it as read, Mr. President.
Motion by Councilor Zelinski, is there a second?
With the edits, changes of being, changed from Ron Deaving as also co-chairman of the town council, so.
Is there a second? Second by Councilor Alves. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call.
Ms. Alves? Yes. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazbek?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
Yes, motion carries. And at this time, I would, there's one last item on the agenda. So we have about 13 minutes. No, 7 minutes.
8 minutes, we keep talking about it, 7.
Item number 10, new business, discussion by council vote or other action on award of bid for a vehicle for town administrator. Mrs. Hamilton.
We went out to bid for the administrator's vehicle as requested by council. We had 3 qualified bids. But we did check with Imperial Municipal Partners who listed the bid for the police undercover vehicles. And they did have a lower bid, and they would honor it, so we decided to go with Imperial Motors at $65. And I did put on the memo that we do have some unused funds from highway and from town hall painting that would cover that with our capital lease.
Are there any questions?
So let me understand this, if I may. We went out to bid, we got 3 bids, but we rejected all 3 because we have a better offer on the floor.
We have been rock on a bid that we already had.
On the bid we already had, and they're on.
Yes.
Is that for this? For Ford Focus, I don't think anything will forward with that. And the solicitor has no issue with that.
I do not, it's a rejection of the bids and an award of,
An existing bid or an expansion of an existing. Based upon the recommendation of the finance director and the concurrence with the solicitor, I move that we allocate $16,065 to Imperial Municipal Partners for 2014 Ford Focus. Funds to be obtained in the manner prescribed by the finance director.
Motion by Mr. Yazbek, is there a second? Seconded by Councilor McGee. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Alves? McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazbek?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Flaherty?
No. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
Well,
Ripped it up.